The main character of this manhwa is an arrogant and overconfident young man. One day, a mysterious portal appeared before him, immediately pulling him in and transporting him to the world of martial arts. There, he began his journey as a warrior, gaining unbelievable power and climbing to the top. In the ruthless world of Murim, he lived like a legendary god of war. Then he suddenly woke up. Returning to his old world, he realized everything had changed. Now, he doesn't just live, he becomes the strongest. With the help of a system, he levels up step by step, crushing hordes of enemies, and even meeting cute girls along the way. And, of course, fluffy kittens. From the very first pages, the manhwa opens with brutal carnage, blood flying everywhere. Thousands of enemies relentlessly charging in from every direction, and a fearsome swordsman whose eyes burn with ruthless fire. The battle-hardened Emperor Ilchin, born of war itself. He earned that title after conquering the entirety of one island on his own. He was called Emperor not because of lineage or blood, but because of his unmatched martial skill. So perfect that even the heavens bowed before his blade. Wealth, gold, power. There was nothing a warrior like him couldn't seize with a flick of his wrist. But eventually, it all became meaningless. One day, he simply vanished, left everything behind without a single word. This mystery plagued the mind of the Black Mountain Monk, who had once offered the wanderer a temporary refuge in his secluded temple. Under the moonlight, the monk's bald head gleamed like polished diamond, and for a brief second, that gleam blinded Ilchin, whose real name was Yang Su-hyuk. The man's frown deepened, his face full of irritation, which stung the monk, especially since not even a hint of apology followed. Even at farewell, the man showed no softness, not a shred of warmth, just a cold, distant look. But why is Su-hyuk so desperate to leave this world? He has nothing left to long for. Everything he once desired, he's already achieved. And before him lies nothing but peace, luxury, and eternal glory. Yet his aim reached far beyond pleasure and desire. The monk wrapped himself in snakeskin, lathered in a thick, foul-smelling substance. Only Ilchin could tame that serpent, for all the wonders of the world bowed to him without resistance. Somewhere deep in his mind, the wanderer still sensed a faint trace of regret. But even that couldn't reveal the true reason behind his departure. The solitude of a stranger in a distant world. The painful truth that he'd never see his loved ones again. The monk wouldn't hear a word. In silence, he drew the final artifact, asking one last, wordless question. Was there truly nothing this man regretted? Everything he'd built, no longer his. But the warrior's heart stood firm. No hesitation, no remorse. He just wanted to go home, no matter the cost. If his will was truly that strong, then the dark monk would grant it. But he'd strip away every gain, leaving nothing behind. The warrior's eyes began to close, as though the world itself was releasing him. The monk wished to speak once more, but the moment slipped away. When he awoke, it was in a hospital room. It took time before the man grasped where he was. When clarity returned, he knew it was Earth. He tried to rise, but his body screamed in burning pain. Had just a few days in the hospital really made him this weak? The Black Mountain Monk had vowed to return him the instant he vanished from reality. But clearly, something had gone wrong with the return point. To recover his strength, the man turned to the sacred Source Earth technique, a meditative art he'd personally created in the world of Wan. Energy surged through his body like fire, reviving every muscle, restoring his old form. He no longer felt aged. Even his skin shimmered, as if life itself had been reignited. Power welled up in his eyes, too. One glance in the mirror confirmed it. He was whole again. He reached to call a nurse, but a system window appeared in front of him. A new mission: save humanity. Not exactly the welcome he expected after leaving Urim. Then came another message. The sacred Source Earth technique had reached A-rank mastery. He stared in disbelief, and even slapped himself in the face in panic, confirming the glowing screen was real. Anger flared up. He began to curse the monk. and everything shiny around it reminded me of that shiny bald spot, which seemed now a symbol of betrayal. Coming to terms with all of this, the guy decided to open the status window. All of his stats were at minimum. His class was fighter, his karma was off the charts, and the notes section stated that the user was disabled due to long inactivity. The accumulated karma value was many times that of ordinary people of the same age and race. Since the man had been in Murim for too long, he had completely forgotten about modern technology, and now he could hardly understand what was in front of him at all. Some kind of magic or an illusion from Juan's world. Did the monk miss so badly that he sent him to a world that only superficially resembles Earth? But if it's all an illusion, why is the date of birth the same and the details of the past not distorted? The character was definitely at home. The system window flashing in front of my eyes was starting to get annoying, and the man told it to disappear. It obeyed instantly. It was as if it sensed the order itself. The guy decided to check again, and made sure he could summon and remove it with his voice. With each repetition, it became clearer. The world had changed, and it had become something more than it had been before. Nurses entered the room. The guy dared to say a polite hello to them and asked what was going on here in general. But upon seeing the patient conscious, the nurses instantly became nervous. One immediately ran for a doctor. The emergency examination began, but doctors were surprised to note that his body had not sustained a single injury. When a man dropped that it had been 5 years since the portals had been opened, it sounded like thunder. Turns out he'd been in a coma the whole time. It's now 2028. The news made anger boil up in his soul, mixed with amazement and dismay. The guy wouldn't hesitate to strangle that bald monk if he were near him right now. The doctor walked away, leaving him alone, and the nurses reported that a relative had visited him. She came almost every day. All this time, 5 years in a row, that's how much she loved him. The door swung open abruptly, and Soo-hyuk's sister, Sua, appeared in the room, all grown up and so dear. Seeing that he was conscious, the girl burst into tears of relief and joy, and the man didn't even believe it was his sister at first. He remembered her as a little girl. Sua threw herself around his neck and hugged him tightly, as if trying to make up for the years of separation. And she started telling me how worried she was. Lived with the thought that she would never see him alive again. Now it was all behind them, they were together again, and nothing else mattered to her. When she calmed down a bit, asked how he felt after entering the portal, as many complained of severe pain. The guy guffawed that he almost choked from her embrace, and asked, what portal is she referring to? 5 years ago, in 2023, the world shook with disaster, something akin to a massive earthquake. Then the opening of the portals began. Huge rifts connected the Earth to other worlds. Some of them led to safe zones, others into deadly dungeons inhabited by monsters. These worlds were inhabited by monsters, and simultaneously with their appearance, people with unique abilities began to awaken. This is how the world learned about the awakened, those who were able to change reality by force of will. Everything has changed over the years. Life will never be the same again. That day is now called the Portal Incident, the starting point of a new era. The hero couldn't believe that the system window had mentioned the Awakened One. What if it was really about him? He decided to deal with it later, but for now it was best not to tell anyone about the system. Too much was unclear and could turn dangerous. The man inquired about his sister's studies, but I was surprised to learn that she never enrolled anywhere. It seemed strange because Sua had always done well in school and was a diligent student. Is this all because of him? According to her, she was just tired of studying and wanted to start earning. But the boy immediately felt behind these words hides something more than ordinary fatigue. As if guessing his thoughts, the sister hastened to assure him that she was telling the truth and immediately changed the subject, as if she were afraid he would ask another question. My parents were due to arrive soon. The hero was beginning to forget, but as far as he could remember, he had always had a warm relationship with his mother. My father, on the other hand, was more complicated. The man he called father was by profession what is commonly called a writer. Poet, critic, short story writer, but most often just a man immersed in his thoughts and almost always busy working. He rarely spent time with his children, not because he didn't want to, but because he was constantly in some sort of creative process. The life of a writer, especially without fame, is like a never-ending struggle with poverty. As the years went by, he continued to write, but nothing changed. The lad could not accept the poverty in which they lived, and was often angry at how little his father did to change their situation. One evening he saw the man sitting at his computer again, and then he couldn't take it anymore. His irritation came out, and he snapped, yelling at him. It all seemed a waste of time to him. Wasn't ashamed to continue such an existence, clinging to a dream that had long ago brought nothing but pain? For my father, however, writing became more than just a business. It was a refuge, the only thing still left of his former life. And he continued to work, even at night, even though he realized how much he was annoying his son. Eventually the man gave up his dream, as if giving in under the weight of resentment and recriminations. One day, after coming home with a fried chicken, he wanted to do something kind. My son was just about to go out with his friends, and that's when my father reached into his breast pocket, and he took out a couple bills and handed them to his son. But that only made the guy angry. He found such a gesture almost insulting. After all, they had almost nothing, and her father is trying to give them something for no reason. In the heat of irritation, he said the worst part, that it would be better if his father wasn't part of their family at all. At least it's good that later the hero realized what he really was, a stupid, impatient, cruel, and blind son. Had he known that this was their last meeting, perhaps things would have turned out differently. But probably not, for he was too young to realize the implications of what he had said. That very night, he accidentally stumbled into the portal, and everything changed. My father came running when he was already starting to be pulled into the other world, but he didn't have time to do anything, just stood there and watched his son disappear. After the hero woke up in the Huang country, he daily recalled that day and regretted every word he had said back then. Dreaming of his return, what he wanted most was to simply ask for forgiveness for everything that had happened between them. But it had been 5 years. When the parents arrived, they couldn't hide their emotions. Joy and tears were pouring at the same time, especially Mom, who just couldn't stop. Dad, on the other hand, remained reserved, as if he'd carried it all inside for too long and just didn't know how to show his feelings. He remembered that fight and was the first to apologize, saying he should have earned more to be treated with respect, but he couldn't. The guy held no grudge against him. On the contrary, he should have been the one to apologize. My father always took care of the family, did his best, and in return he heard only reproaches and contempt. Now the hero vowed that he would never again allow himself even a hint of such words. And they hugged each other tightly, as if trying to erase from their minds everything that had separated them these 5 years. Even Sua couldn't hold back the tears. Everything was so touching that she herself didn't realize whether to laugh or cry. Then her brother couldn't help himself and teased her. In response, she began to slap him lightly, but all she could read on his face was joy and relief. At that moment, the hero realized that he had come back for a reason. Everything he was looking for, everything he wanted had been here nearby all along. He was released from the hospital 3 days later. The doctor was shocked. He couldn't believe that a man who had just woken up from a 5-year coma could recover so quickly. He kept repeating the same question, how is this possible? At one point, he even asked if he'd had an awakening, but the guy decided not to talk about it yet. He didn't understand much of what was going on and wasn't about to share the details with the first person he met. But there was something useful in this situation. The doctor, interested in his recovery, offered to cover half of the cost of treatment on the condition that he would come for a checkup every month. So the hero, barely waking up, has already begun to gradually repay his parents' debts. He was glad to be back, not so much to the hospital as home to them, but he realized he would be indebted to his family forever. Even though it was due to his holy land source technique, it still eased the financial burden a bit for his loved ones. When his sister walked him home, he was shocked at where they lived. It was a shabby, dirty apartment where even the air seemed heavy. According to Sua, They had a move here, but the story was too long and the parents hardly ever showed up. The hero felt depressed. Yes, they had always lived poorly, but this was too much, as if someone was humiliating them on purpose. He began to suspect that it was his treatment that had finally trampled the family into poverty. Then he firmly decided that he was going to earn as much as possible, as soon as possible, and also that loved ones would no longer suffer. In this new world, the most obvious way to get rich quick was to become a hunter. And then this guy started training, determined to follow a difficult path full of pain and hardship. The Guardian class, of course, commands more respect and glory. After all, they protect humanity. But hunters earn much more. However, it is not that simple. Not everyone can bear such a burden. This man's body is in such a condition that it is too early for him to even dream of this profession. Even a light jog was driving him to exhaustion, and his chest burned from lack of air. His blood was 90% infected, causing his body to have almost no energy to fight even fatigue. They say some monsters are easy prey, but if a guy suddenly gets injured, it could cost him his life. So for now, it's better for him to focus on training to gain confidence in his own abilities. Fortunately, blood poisoning can be overcome with regular and persistent exercise. Moreover, this guy was a martial artist, and his path didn't start from nothing. The protagonist practiced hard every day, overcoming weakness and pain step by step. Stair running and the Mabu stance are the simplest but incredibly effective exercises he learned in Marima. He was on the right track, but the speed of recovery left a lot to be desired. Things were slow. Blood poisoning was coming down agonizingly slowly, and one workout wasn't enough to make progress. He needed something drastic, something that would change everything and speed up the recovery. While he was in the hospital, his family worked nonstop to support themselves and pay for his treatment. And even if it is hard, this man is obliged to overcome himself because he has no other choice. After all, he must become a hunter in the next few days, lest he let his kin down and lose his chance. Now he decided to use the sacred earth origin technique stored in his mind like an ancient covenant. It is the greatest of all the meditative techniques of the Huang country, coming from the depths of ancient teachings. It is known for its effectiveness, but it also has a hidden bonus that can change a person's destiny. The potential of the awakened one goes beyond what is possible, for he draws on the power of nature and the world itself. Each application gives a sense of rebirth, as if body and spirit are united in a new state. However, only 3 people in the entire Huang country know about this technique and are able to pass it on. Gathering his will in a fist, the guy continued practicing, not allowing himself to be lazy for a minute, and even surprised an old man who happened to be passing by, with his lively and swift run up the stairs. Day after day, he continued to climb the steps, knowing no mercy for his body or mind. He could not allow himself to stop, despite the pain, the fatigue, or the despair. He owed it to himself to overcome his inner barriers, even if it took everything, time, effort, and pain. That's why he was nicknamed Ilchin, the emperor of martial arts in Murim, where only strength of mind is valued. The training continued from the morning until the evening, until my legs were shaking from the exertion, and the bright sun constantly reminded him of the bald head of the monk under whose gaze he had once studied. And this, strangely enough, gave him strength, as if the monk was invisibly watching and giving his support. The old man watched him with interest and even admired him every day, amazed at the lad's persistence. He even muttered once that he wished he had a son just like him, just as stubborn and strong. When a moon was rising in the sky, the protagonist was already pretty tired, exhausted, and barely breathing. But it was only a short distance to the end of the stairs, and he knew he had to get there no matter how hard it was. Filling his lungs with air, he felt he was nearing the brink of running out of strength. A little more, and the inner barrier will finally be overcome. You just have to keep going. He continued running, and the system reported that it was impressed by the awakened one's indomitable spirit, persistence, and determination. For this, She improved his performance by rewarding effort and recognizing his aspirations. The hidden bonus of the Sacred Earth Source technique was also activated. The awakening went deeper. The hero has broken the barrier of 3 stars, passing the threshold beyond which new powers and possibilities open up. His blood poisoning had decreased by 30%. He had reached level 2. All his stamina reserves had recovered, and his wounds had completely healed, leaving his skin clean. The protagonist was genuinely happy about this success. It was a sign that everything was not in vain and the path was chosen correctly. Even the system showed respect and rewarded him with a new skill, Iron Claws, and the characteristic willpower. Now he can finally become a real hunter, not by word of mouth, but by right of strength and perseverance. And the very next day, he went to the association to register and start the journey. For him, the concept of skills still seems almost unreal to him, like dreams come true. They appear on their own, without any training in martial arts or magic, which breaks the usual logic he was accustomed to from a young age. Maybe that's why the system window had remained blank all this time until the morning, not showing itself. His only superpower, defined by the system at the beginning, is the Sacred Earth Source technique. But he learned that a hunter is required to have at least 3 skills, or else he will not be recognized even at the trials. Therefore, he quickly pumped up his martial arts without wasting a moment, for he had almost no time left. He ended up gaining 5 new rank A skills at once, and that was only the first page that opened up before him. In the next scene, a man from the Superpowers Agency appears. The man looked a bit confused seeing so many unusual skills gathered in one person in front of him. However, for those who dream of becoming rich in a short period of time, such a thing is more gratifying than alarming. The guy went straight to the front desk because he had to take an aptitude test. The employee behind the counter, haggard and bored, didn't even look at the visitor, only told him to place his palm on the glowing orb. If the orb began to emit light, it meant that an awakened person was standing in front of it. Otherwise, go home without further ado. It was clear from the clerk's tired face that there were too many overconfident newcomers showing up here. Many of them are convinced that magic flows in their veins, but most of the time, everything ends in silence, and the orb remains dark, not living up to their hopes. This time it was different. The orb suddenly flashed with a bright light, confirming that there was a true awakened one in front of them. The guy immediately proceeded to fill out the questionnaire without wasting any time. When the man from the agency looked at the list of his 30 abilities, he was slightly taken aback. My first thought was that the young man had simply embellished the data, unable to cope with excitement or elation. However, there was indeed a person in front of him who possessed all of the above skills, which was confirmed instantly. The system window displayed them in full. The surprise on the man's face was replaced by amazement, his jaw almost touching the table. He immediately began apologizing for his first impression, and afterward, after hastily gathering his thoughts, he headed to the leadership to report this incredible case to Xingwu. This chief at once showed a keen interest in the young man, for such phenomena had not met here for a long time. But something still caught his eye about this unknown kid. He's going to keep an eye on him. Finished with the registration, the guy went home full of new thoughts and expectations. On the way, he remembered how he had almost passed out from a routine jog not too long ago. But it was from that day that his body began to gain stamina, step by step, through pain and sweat. During the registration process, it became clear that each hunter is required to undergo special training before going out on assignments. The state has provided a special training program to reduce accidental deaths in dungeons. The course is scheduled to start on the last day of the month, and the young hunter had exactly 5 days to spare. Although he would have gladly avoided this mandatory, there was no way to refuse the course. So the man decided to devote the rest of his time to training. There's too much at stake. Those 5 days flew by like a flash, and then he arrived at the General Assembly Place, where a huge crowd had already gathered. It felt like a real festival filled with anticipation. At some point, a slight pulse of strange energy passed by him. It went a long way through all the crowds of people. But where did it start? And right in front of a lot of people. The figure of an elven woman named Shahar Kalaluriat appeared on the stage, whose appearance instantly drew all the eyes of those present. By the time the guy had time to realize what was happening, she was already standing in the center of the stage. He hadn't caught her approach. The man was surprised by her energetic presence, mysterious and strong, and he felt an interest in her abilities and background awaken inside. It turned out that the elfess had noticed the newcomer a long time ago, standing in the center of the crowd and staring at her. And the association's leadership has asked her to keep a closer eye on this promising fighter. Despite the low level, the guy managed to catch a glimpse of her aura, if only for a single moment. And it came as a surprise to Shahar, for such a thing was rare among her people. The elfess then turned to the hall and formally greeted everyone gathered. She said that the South Korean government invited her as an instructor for a training course, and she herself is a warrior from Elvenheim, but her apprentices may call her simply Shahar for convenience. This case was the first time that a representative of the Elven people is involved in the training of humans, and Shahar realized that the new recruits probably had a lot of questions piling up, but time was running out, so she only allowed 3, no more. The first one who dared to speak was a young girl named Beck Ian who had recently turned 19. She raised her hand, wanting answers to her questions about starting school, and everyone in the audience was shocked to hear her age. After all, no one expected that such an appearance could hide so many years of age. Instead of a question, the girl, without hiding her admiration, began showering the elfess with compliments, noting her graceful appearance. And from the expression on the guest's face, it was clear that such words were pleasant to her. But as a member of an ancient lineage of sword masters, she preferred to be respected for more than her outward beauty, and for the feats on the battlefield and the services rendered in battles, where it is not the appearance that decides, but the steel and fortitude with which that appearance is ready to fight to the last man. It was time for the next question, and the atmosphere in the room was once again filled with anticipation. Many of the students pulled their hands up in the air, but the pixie's gaze stopped on the boy, named Jin Chong-hyuk, who was distinguished from the others by his prominent tattoos. Everyone stared at him in disbelief, and the main character immediately sensed that this guy might have a dark past. And the premonition did not fail. The guy was clearly nervous, worried about whether his criminal past would be a barrier to participation. He remembered what he had read in the rules. Admission is possible if the instructor approves. In fact, he had only committed petty theft, not the most serious offense, but still. The elfess couldn't approve of such behavior, though she wasn't about to condemn it. She stated that he would still be trained along with others like any other student. In Elvenheim, such are given the choice of redeeming themselves by protecting the people or remaining a criminal. And since he's here, it means he chose the path deliberately and in favor of justice. She told him to remember that a broken law is not forgotten and guilt remains. But this does not preclude the possibility of forgiveness if the soul truly desires to atone for sin. The boy only nodded silently, expressing his gratitude. And at that moment, the protagonist felt it was his turn to ask one last question. When he said his name, the elfess, unsurprised, made it clear that she had been watching him for some time now. The guy was a little embarrassed. However, he did wonder if she would be the only one teaching the class. Shahar confirmed. She is the head instructor for this program, but it will not work alone, because the helpers will be people born on Earth, and the elven woman herself will personally take over the battles in preparation for them. Shahar was about to finish her introduction, but suddenly a gruff, male voice came from the audience, sounding like a challenge. The man stated that he wasn't going to trust her because the person in front of them wasn't a human being at all, and furthermore, without official rank from the association. Judging from his words, he doubted she was capable of a fight, citing her frail appearance. Shahar's face changed dramatically. Her emotions were no longer hidden, and in that second, she gathered such a powerful wave of energy. Let her go ahead. in a way that not only the bratty kid was affected by it, but everyone else gathered was knocked off their feet as well, as if a powerful wind had swept through the hall. She didn't even bother to say anything. The Force said more for her. The Elphis then reminded of the chain of command and clear boundaries of what was allowed, and warned that if it happened again, no mercy would be expected. The offender turned pale, and a wet spot appeared at the bottom of his pants. Fear had completely taken over his body. Shahar, noticing this, grinned, but suddenly her gaze darkened with surprise. Siak stood motionless in the middle of the crowd like a stone, unmoved by the pressure of its force, while the others remained defeated, pinned to the floor. It was now clear why the association had ordered him to be watched particularly closely. The lad could have been sent to the dungeons by now. He was ready to go. But in her eyes, strength is not the only criterion. It is also important to be able to use it correctly. So she decided not to jump to conclusions just yet and looked at everyone with renewed severity. Then turned to everyone, warning them not to try her patience. And, having finished her speech, she left the stage, leaving behind a heavy silence and a multitude of questions. Classes started pretty soon, although so far the cadets have only mastered the theoretical basics, while the teachers talked about the varieties of monsters and their behavior. The protagonist was almost dozing off, but Shahar brought him to his senses lightning fast, leaving no chance of sleep. And, judging by her scrutinizing gaze, she never relaxed her control for a second, not allowing herself to miss even the smallest detail. Then he turned around and realized that Chanyak was sitting next to him, who had been watching him intently all this time, as if trying to figure something out. But meeting his gaze, he quickly averted his eyes and pretended as if nothing of the sort had happened. The protagonist chuckled weakly, as if he knew what he was talking about, but immediately got another flick from Shahar. She didn't allow any distraction or relaxation, recalling that a strict mentor always enforces discipline and does not tolerate frivolity. The man, having completed his lesson, I felt so emotionally uplifted that I was almost ready to cry from relief and happiness. He had never seen such an appreciative and focused audience in his entire life, and it was all thanks to Shahar. Baek-yoon moved closer to the main character. She was overwhelmed with admiration at how the instructor was able to bring everyone to their senses, and the guy himself was the only one who could resist her energy pressure. Chang-hyuk noticed it too. The girl wondered how he was able to resist, and the guy, not giving any credit to his stamina, simply replied that he was lucky, and that simple modesty awakened Chang-hyuk's genuine respect. That's why his gaze stayed on me the whole class. The girl offered to have lunch with them together, but the guy politely declined, and without wasting any time, he used his powers to hide from everyone. Theory classes will last exactly 30 days with no possibility of adjustment, since the Ministry of Education does not allow deviations in the regulations set in advance. The hero dreams of completing his training as soon as possible, successfully passing the exam and moving on to practical combat missions. Paradoxically, a significant percentage of cadets fail the theoretical part and drop out early before even getting to combat missions. Shahar does not let anyone down, and the teachers are confident that the current intake will show an outstanding result. But even this does not guarantee success. Although the exam is not too difficult, it requires diligence, concentration, and constant preparation. In addition, strange rumors are spreading among students, as if failure on the exam imposes a curse, and it will be impossible to retake it. Ion was seriously worried about these words, though the protagonist himself treated them as fiction, assuming that the reason for failure is much more trivial, in irresponsibility and disorganization. For example, someone skips lectures, someone wastes time partying. There are plenty of such cases. The main character left class that day and missed an extra class. After all, in his priorities, family always came first, and now he wanted to be near those he fought for. A month passed, and the day of the exam came. The tension in the air could be cut with a knife. Chanyak could barely hide his excitement, and Ion's heart was racing with anxiety and anticipation. Finally, the list of cadets who had successfully passed the test appeared, and among the lucky ones were the protagonist and his new comrades with whom he passed this test. Ion glowed with joy, unable to contain her emotions, and Chang-hyuk, without hiding his tears, burst into tears. After all, behind the rough appearance hid a kind and sympathetic man, capable of sincere feelings. The protagonist kept watching this guy, who showed amazing diligence in his studies. So he gradually began to learn the details of his life. It turned out that the young man was raising his younger brothers and sister alone. Their father died because of alcohol addiction, and their mother, unable to withstand the beatings and constant scandals, left the family, disappearing without a trace. Since his sophomore year of high school, the young man has taken on the role of guardian. He grew up in a dysfunctional environment, which left an imprint even on his appearance. However, behind the outward ruggedness, there was a reliable and responsible man. One day, he went on a stealing spree to feed his youngest. This resulted in a prison sentence, but after his release, he immediately got a job and paid off all the family's debts. Already that act spoke far more about him than any words could. Chang-hyuk felt a deep gratitude towards Suyok Dash. The boy was a living example to him of perseverance and willpower. He also felt an appreciation for Ion Dash. The girl patiently explained the study material to him until very late in the evening. The hero had previously thought her superficial, but found himself impressed by her intelligence and determination. The young man often shared his scholastic successes with the younger ones, knowing that there would be many challenges ahead. By the way, 42 of the 49 cadets received a passing grade, which was quite unusual because usually the selection is tougher and half of the dropouts. The instructor, named Char, turned out to be a true professional of his craft. Now began the second phase of training, physical training, which was scheduled to start the following week. The week passed like a blink of an eye, and Mentor Shahar reappeared in front of the 8th group, which included all 3 comrades. It was she who broke the flow into teams, bringing the 3 of them together, for their goals and views were remarkably similar. It was as if fate had appointed her to lead this little group. Ion was genuinely excited at the appearance of her mentor, but the pixie quickly brought everyone back within the bounds of discipline dash. Her cold stare was enough to make all 3 of them straighten up and stand at attention. She announced that they would be heading for the portal and suggested that Chang-hyuk and Suyok explain its purpose. A portal is a passage to other worlds, and not all of them are equally safe. There are 2 broad categories. Some lead to friendly worlds, while others lead to dangerous and hostile ones. Danger portals are categorized by threat level, from the 1st to the 13th, where the latter is considered the most deadly. The Elphus was pleased with how well they had grasped the theory, and announced that their task today was to pass through a first danger portal. Ion perked up. After all, such portals are considered suitable for beginners. They are home to weak monsters, and not many of them. Shahar clarified how easy it would be to clear such a passage. And when the girl confidently replied that it would be super easy, Ta sharply asked a counter question. In her opinion, then, such creatures are incapable of killing a human? The students felt anxious, and the mentor did not bother to comfort them dash. Monsters, she emphasized, could very well prove deadly. At times like this, their true nature is on full display, bloodthirsty and ruthless. Shahar let out an intimidating aura, but even under her pressure, the protagonist remained unfazed, which caused the mentor to be genuinely surprised. She repeated, "Monsters are deadly, and if someone can't even withstand the pressure of an instructor, they have no chance of surviving in real combat." As the young man handled her pressure, she asked if he had faced any real fights. The answer was evasive, so she stopped asking, deciding that it would be up to him to prove his mettle. It was time to head for the portal, so they decided to run to the subway station. Or rather, that's what Shahar decided. After all, neither public nor private transportation was unfamiliar to her. She appointed a young man to be the leader of their group. and in the same instant she disappeared, as if dissolved in the air current. There was no choice left. The boys ran all the way to the station, spending almost an hour on it. And when they finally arrived, they were almost out of breath from fatigue. Only this guy looked like he wasn't even running at all. Shahar allotted 10 minutes to rest, and almost the entire trio settled down on the ground with a sigh of relief. The threat of the monsters had taken its toll on them, and now with a marathon around the city, I can at least take a little breather. Maybe this was all part of the plan all along. If so, this woman is not just a good mentor, she is a born educator. When exactly 10 minutes had passed, the instructor announced it, and the group headed down into the underground part of the station. The name of the first-degree portal at Mafo Station is Mugio. Translated, it's a world without borders, which sounds almost philosophical. While preparing for the exam, the young man learned an interesting thing. There are several portals with this name. They are lifeless worlds with the same names, with no signs of intelligent life and no apparent value. But those who have been there claim to have encountered traces of ancient and long-vanished civilizations. It made one wonder if all Mugio are actually the wreckage of great worlds long gone. Shahar showed a special clearance, and the 3 students stepped through the portal, which immediately started sucking them inside, instantly finding himself among the cold sands and rocks of a lifeless desert. The instructor gave them free rein, but cautioned them against being overconfident. The group then began exploring the harsh world. This place is home to monsters that move on 4 powerful legs and look like giant dogs. They are about 3 meters tall at the withers. The main danger is the bite. Monsters attack sharply and suddenly, using the power of their jaws. They can jump great distances and attack in packs, usually of 3 or 5 individuals. Even though they are considered first-rank opponents, they are deadly for novice fighters. Although this young man is not an ordinary rookie. But where did he get his toughness from? The guy calls a lot of system windows to check and flex his skills. He didn't miss a single lecture, practiced every day, and within a month, he had seriously strengthened himself. And most importantly, he mastered the Sacred Earth Spring technique. Thanks to this technique, energy regeneration during combat is doubled, giving you a significant advantage. Getting into the combat system was hard at first, but thanks to the bonuses and constant practice, he had a noticeable lead over his bandmates. His battle experience, technique, endurance all made him almost a leader. With such progress in 1 month, it was simply ridiculous to be afraid of a first-degree portal. Suddenly, the man's gaze locked onto a silhouette. A group of 5 monsters were moving ahead. The instructor began to guide them, but the young fighter was already itching. He thought he could do it alone. He noted to himself that no weapons could be seen in the hands of his comrades, which caused slight concern. And at the same instant, on cue, the entire trio rushed forward. Chang Hyuk appeared to be armed with a pair of blades growing out his hands, just like a wolverine. And the girl, Ayon, judging by the actions, was acting as a support and a hitter. Now is the moment for decisive action. The man made a dash for it, overtaking his comrades, leaving them in amazement. And by getting close to one of the monsters, deftly dodged a powerful throw. Using a martial art technique called palm technique, he delivered a piercing blow, easily piercing through the enemy's defenses. Before he could catch his breath, he sensed danger. Another creature rushed at him from behind. In a split second, he pushed off the ground and, soaring upward, he delivered a scathing leg kick, crushing the last of his opponents. The comrades simply didn't even have time to react, remaining in utter amazement. Even Shahar's mentor could hardly believe that the one in front of her was just a cadet. The boy stood on the body of the defeated wolf. At that moment, his instincts caught the approach of another creature, and he snapped out of his seat, heading straight for the threat. The next lunge was devastating. The swift blow drove the monster into the ground with such force that dust rose. Instructor Shahar tried her best to keep her cool, as a mentor should, but inside she wanted to take this fighter to Elvenheim. The man shook off his hands and stood pensive for a moment, Maybe experience from a past life helps to fight so instinctively. The body reacted on its own, without a second thought, and the system certainly played no small part in this. If he were in one now, he would be among the best of the best, among the elite of warriors. When the wolves lunged at him again, it was clear there were two left, and he could do quite well without help. But it was worth conceding this time. They're a team, after all, and it's an important experience for others, not just another sweep. For the fighter, it was just another item on his personal bucket list. And for his comrades, a step toward real hardening and a confident future. Jong Hyuk couldn't believe it. Did his partner really want to give them a chance? He released his claws again, summoned the monsters to himself, and prepared to attack. Swung around and unleashed a fiery charge. Went through the wolf, cutting it in two. A young noticed movement behind her and warned him of the impending danger. However, it was too late. The blow was about to come right on his head. Jong Hyuk didn't have time to realize how the wolf was able to get around him from the rear. But Ah Young reacted instantly, summoning magic, and started the treatment. All wounds healed with astonishing speed. The girl's healing gift manifested itself in all its strength. The boy realized how important such an ability was in combat. And in the same instant, a new pack appeared in front of them. The man didn't like it, wasn't even allowed to catch his breath. But he was already used to the constant tension. We had to follow through. A short time later, the group returned to the building. Tired but satisfied, they began to complain of body aches and dreamed of a warm bed. The man understood them perfectly. This was the first real test for the team as part of 6 Approaches training. Instructor Char praised the group. She knew that the Earthlings who had awakened the Force would not fail. According to her, the boys have not only become more resilient, but also noticeably stronger. And progressing right through combat is an accomplishment almost impossible. The man was in agreement with her. Each collision made them stronger. He had previously attributed his advantage to talent, but now he was beginning to suspect that the system had played a crucial role. The instructor had no doubt this team was almost ready for real assignments. And as a mentor, she felt genuinely proud of their efforts and progress. When she released the fighters, they were over the moon, but the man she asked to stay late, just for a minute. Char had a strong feeling that the martial arts technique this man possessed couldn't be just part of the system. It was too calibrated and perfect. What if her hunch was correct? The instructor didn't insist, but he still decided to open up. Yes, he did study martial arts. Char had assumed that, but his file indicated that he had only recently been in a coma, and learning in just a month seemed like something out of the realm of fantasy. Though maybe there's just something she doesn't know yet. The universe is vast and full of mysteries. The man didn't fully understand why she asked the question, but there was more to her gaze than that. She saw something in him that he didn't always see, and the same thing was said about him by the people of the Huan country. Char should have also noted that he was the one who gave his comrades a chance to prove themselves in the first fight, and it was a much more valuable contribution than any personal exploits. He said it for a reason. It was her decision that made him the leader of the group. According to Char, holding a position of responsibility doesn't mean you're a true team leader. Only a few are capable of leading others, and he was among them. The man felt a slight embarrassment at her words. It seemed like she was giving him too much credit, but the mentor spoke sincerely, without any exaggeration. After a while, he was on his way home. Thoughts swirled around the mentor. The elfess did have a striking beauty. Even by the standards of her people, it was a rarity, and even in one it was uncommon. He tried to switch. Romance was clearly out of place. There were so many important things ahead. The hunting today was of a high standard. But for him, it was just another phase. After all, it wasn't long ago that he held the title of Martial Arts Emperor in Huang. The man is confident, moved to regain his strength, even though he knew it would be a long journey to the top. But there was no hurry. Either everything was going its own way, step by step without fuss. After a while, a man sat in the woods humming a song while cutting up the body of a goblin. If this continues, the young man will soon start earning more than 10 million won a month. On the third day of portal training, The team mopped up several first and second rank portals and was rewarded handsomely for it. Skin, teeth, and other components extracted from monsters have their price on the market. The guy decided not to tell his family about it yet. It could be told later, there's no particular rush. Suddenly, Yun inquired if the man was okay, because the guy looked too happy in that setting. The tattered corpses of the monsters lay before the man, and the young man didn't understand. Were the man's feelings really that obvious? Yun thought so. The young man was literally glowing. This booty turned out to be really valuable to the guy. Instructor Char pointed out that if anyone saw them now, they would definitely be considered dangerous lunatics. Yun was a little envious of both of them. Both fighters had adapted so quickly, especially Chang Hyuk. The young man had a hard time at first, but now this guy felt like a fish in water. The man guessed that the others were probably working just as hard for the reward. Suddenly, the guy spotted an arrow flying swiftly towards Chang Hyuk and rushed out to catch her. At this time, Chang Hyuk explained that the matter was usually not too difficult in second-level portals either. The man clenched the arrow in his fist, not hiding his displeasure. Chang Hyuk was actually shocked by that move. The man realized this was not a goblin arrow, but clearly a human weapon. They looked into the bushes, from which the very arrow had come out. The guys who saw the bloody goblins came out towards them. Kim Kalik only needed one goblin to level up. Lee Jong-guk regretted not coming here sooner. The guy couldn't understand why the third team was in this place. Recruit from the third team, Jin Cheong clarified if the group in question belonged to the 8th team, led by Char. Instructor Char replied with a question in return, reminding her of the third team under Jong Soo-young. Unless Char was mistaken, that one had not requested support in that portal and could not explain the reason for their presence. Kim Kalik, a third-team recruit, thinks they don't need to ask for help because hunting together is always better. Lee Jong-guk from the third team stated that he stopped seeing Char as his mentor. Yun became furious, accusing them of being completely inadequate, reminding them how dangerous it was to get close to Chang Hyuk. Jin Cheong tried to apologize, explaining that it was an accident and there were no serious consequences. Instructor Char insisted on a formal apology, and Jung Soo-young didn't understand what the problem was in the first place. She expressed bewilderment at the setting. Char is now an 8th team instructor, but she is required to give instruction to all recruits. Jong Soo-young, the leader of the third team and a member of the Amuga Guild, characterized Char as cold as ice. In her opinion, the nickname Death Flower is not accidental. The recruits' petty pranks are not worth serious punishment. Jin Cheong sarcastically recalled the unfortunate nature of the events. Instructor Char, on the other hand, emphasized that even accidental actions, they put someone else's life at risk, and therefore an apology was mandatory. Plus, interfering with someone else's portal sweep is a serious offense. Jong Soo-young thought that Char was too boring to talk to. Talking to elves bored her, and crossing their paths even more so. Instructor Char asked Jong Soo-young to remember who she was. Char reminded her that she was serving as not just a mentor to the 8th team, but as the chief instructor of the entire program. A boundary had been crossed. Jong Soo-jong found it impossible to talk. She commanded like an old general. Let them take the loot, and they'll look for another one. And if the rules are broken, let them go to the Amuga Guild. Instructor Char called out loudly to Jong Soo-young, and Kalik threw in their direction to wish them a pleasant day. After a while, the boys returned to headquarters, and Chang Hyuk thanked the man. The gratitude came from the bottom of his heart. If it wasn't for that person, Chang Hyuk would have been seriously injured. Chang Hyuk decided to thank the man with dinner at a restaurant. The guy thought coffee would be enough, and Yun was upset at being overlooked once again. It was the same last time. The man wondered how she had managed to overhear them, for the team was sure she was already gone. Yun only left to go to the restroom for a short while, and then came back to wait for them. The man apologized to the girl and offered to go to a restaurant together. Yun readily agreed and delicately let the man know that the payment was worth taking on, and the guy took the hint. The next day, the man once again engaged in battle with monsters and leveled up. System window reflected parameters. Age, 27 years. Profession, martial arts master. Chaotic neutral worldview with excess karma. Strength, 23. Agility, 25. Endurance, 29. Wisdom, 22. Will, 42. Accumulated karma far exceeded the average of those of his age and race. The body had been purified by 40%. The effectiveness of techniques based on chi energy increased significantly. The Zhen and Du meridians are unlocked, and the speed and efficiency of energy recovery is increased by 200% of the base level. The man rejoiced at his growth and increased strength. The boy had finally fully found his fighting rhythm. At this rate of recovery and growth, he is expected to return to his position as the #1 warrior in the world. The man thought about sharing this news with his family when he suddenly froze. Instructor Shahar appeared in front of the man and broke the arrows in one motion. Recently, Instructor Zhang Suyung had been appearing in the team's hunting zone too often, and Shahar regarded such visits not as an accident, but as direct interference. Jin Chai-young only followed her mentor's order, shooting in the direction indicated. Recruit had no idea of the presence of the other hunters. Instructor Shahar was certain that these visits were purposeful provocations, while Young Su-young insisted otherwise, claiming that Shahar was the one initiating the conflicts. The guild had already received a complaint from her team the previous day. Shahar said that even if there were violations of the rules, the complaint should have been filed formally through established channels. Zhang Su-young thought it was overkill and didn't understand why they had to talk at all. It would have been easier to kill them. Shahar knew that Zhang Su-young had a personal dislike for her, but that one had already gone too far. The instructor guessed that Zhang Su-young has feelings for Song Moon-hyuk. Zhang Su-young threw a sharp demand for her to shut up. The man was stunned to realize that the reason for the conflict was because she was jealous of him. Shahar believed that the guild wouldn't turn a blind eye to Zhang Su-young's antics indefinitely, and advised her to apologize and stop before it was too late. Zhang Su-young refused to realize the seriousness of the situation. She asked, "And now what? The balloon will kill her?" Shahar's instructor wasn't going to kill her, but she would make sure she was held accountable by the law. But who is she to blame? Young Su-young never realized it. Zhang Su-jong suddenly used a forbidden dark art, and I channeled the power of that technique into the boys. According to Char's mentor's observation, it was too late to retreat. Char managed to land a counterpunch and struck her opponent with the effortless ease of a deflected shot. Young Su-young had no right to retreat anymore. It was all or nothing. Besides, Char's mentor won't kill her. Her nobility won't allow it. Zhang Su-young gave the order to the third group. Instantly destroy them, tear them to shreds. So rigid a demand struck the fighters. The instructor didn't understand. Wasn't the group's goal to get into a Muji's guild? The fighters had to at least cripple their opponents to tear off limbs. After all, a tangible result was required. The soldiers of the third group rushed forward, and Char's mentor only smiled, which further pissed Su-jong off with his unwavering confidence. Zhang Su-young intended to prove that her recruits would tear the 8th team to shreds. The man assessed the composition of his opponents and realized a warrior and an archer stood before him. Suddenly, Chong-guk grew to the size of a giant, tearing his clothes. The guy decided to take the blows of the boar and the archer, leaving the lancemen to the rest of the fighters for the time being. Chong-guk was convinced that he would crush the man like a small insect, and threw sprawling punches that missed their target. The giant swung around, but the man used a tin fist hold and then a fist of destruction hold. Blood gushed from the giant's mouth, and the man marveled that the giant had managed to resist that power at all. The man realized the need to change tactics. The enemy was too nimble. The giant called out to Jin Chai-young, and the archer caught all the instructions without words. The archer drew the bowstring and fired an arrow with great force, and right toward the area below our protagonist's waist, raising a column of dust from the ground. But she missed. The arrow just hit the ground, and the man was already behind the giant's back and called out to him. A man punched a giant and crushed the giant into the ground. Confused Jin Chai-young. Now, By his reckoning, it was the archer's turn, but the archer asked not to come any closer. The man still threw a punch, seeking revenge for Jang Hyuk. The archer was thrown forward, leaving a deep furrow in the soil, and the man realized that he'd gone a little overboard with the power. From across the battlefield came a voice pleading for mercy. Recruit Kalik begged Jang Hyuk to stop. The fighters were unwilling to continue. They were forced. The man grabbed Kalik's arm and told him to calm down and let the guy go. It's not a monster. It's a human being. The guy thanked the protagonist for helping him stop in time. Jang Hyuk scrutinized Kalik's body, as well as the rest of the fighters who managed to get wounded. Jang Soo-young couldn't believe her eyes, and the man quietly inquired if everything was already completed. I think so. It's been proven to everyone. After a while in the Baek-Tusan Guild building, Vice President Im Seol couldn't understand how the 3rd and 8th teams managed to mesh in a fight. Sometime later, a council was convened on the matter. Im Seol asked everyone present a direct question. Do they realize what they're dealing with? According to the staff, the fight between the recruits and the referee looked like a full-blown battle. Usually such meetings were led by Instructor Shahar, but because of the current circumstances, Im Seol took over that role. The man regretfully announced his decision, expulsion of the 3rd team, although he realized that their guilt did not warrant such a harsh punishment. The 11th team's instructor, Lee Sang-wook, knew one of the 8th team's fighters had single-handedly put everyone down. Im Seol considered it forced self-defense, though he couldn't help but note the extreme cruelty. Jang Soo-young sincerely didn't understand what self-defense was about. Her students were lying in intensive care, and the 8th team had come out of the battle without a scratch. Im Seol put the blame on Jang Soo-young, a black cloud witch from the Emoji Guild. In his opinion, she arranged the provocation because of jealousy and petty grudges. He was acting as a judge now, and made it clear that she should be careful what she said. Lee Sang-wook didn't immediately realize if the chairman was really going to let it go without serious repercussions. Still, it was a matter of subordination. But that's what the meeting was called for. It has to be decided by a vote. The situation clearly pointed to one recruit, a guy named Soo Hyuk from the 8th team. Im Seol realized that this young man wasn't just a mere disciple. His talent was rare and intriguing. The mentor offered a show of hands to those in favor of Soo Hyuk's punishment, but not a single one went up. Silence hung in the hall, and one could even hear someone breathing. Lee Sang-wook felt like an outsider among these people, as if everyone had their mouths shut. Im Seol voiced the bottom line. Only Lee Sang-wook and director Young Ho wanted to punish the new recruit. Now, it is the turn to move on to the suggestion about Instructor Shahar. The woman took the initiative to step down as chief instructor and hand over the position to Im Seol. The majority voted in favor. So Shahar remained just an instructor under the current program. And to be serious about the decision, she was obliged to transfer 100 million won to the association's fund. Im Seol clarified if she was willing to accept that condition. The instructor confirmed the agreement, for in her opinion, the bout was fair. Jang Soo-jong thought it was an insult. It all looked like a joke to her, a demotion and a fine. Is that punishment? Im Seol, on the other hand, found the decision to be fair. But the witch disagreed. She called it a circus. The Emoji Guild, in her opinion, had been publicly humiliated, and everyone around her simply remained silent. Indeed, there was silence in the hall. Im Seol repeated what he had said. In his eyes, Jang Soo-young had finally gone off the rails and now thought that her shenanigans would go without consequences. The woman started being rude, which only fueled the anger in the mentor's heart. Im Seol wondered, did she realize where she was, and did she really believe that their loud name could scare anyone here? Things got tense, and the man reminded us that the recruit training program is the backbone of the nation's defense. No profession is more important than protecting the world. And Jung Soo-young is destroying Korea's talent pool with his scheming. As of this moment, she and the entire Emoji Guild are suspended from the national program for a period of 3 years. Jang Soo-young didn't believe that he had that right. But Im Seol was the chief instructor of the 56th recruiting class. Lee Sang-wook wondered, does it need a vote? Minter nodded. Democracy, after all. It's time to make a choice. Baek-tusen or Emoji? Lee Sang-wook knew very well that Baek-tusen was the first in the guild rankings. And Emoji is only third. Perhaps he bet on the wrong side? Looks like things have come to an end for Emoji. After a while, the meeting came to an end. The atmosphere was electrified. Im-sol couldn't remember the last time he had been this angry. Many people wondered what would happen to Emoji now. They brought up a new recruit from the 8th team, a guy named Soo-hyuk. He was the only one who could handle the whole group, and he also had amazing characteristics. Some were already thinking about inviting him into their guild before others did. Jang Hyuk noticed that everyone was just talking about this guy, and Iona thought there was too much fuss over one student. Meanwhile, Soo-hyuk himself was pondering what had been discussed at that meeting. However, the boy realized that he couldn't stop training. It was nice to realize that his efforts were paying off. Late at night, the new recruit thought about how much the constant training and raids in the portal had changed him. He was ready to begin mastering the Heaven and Earth Unity art. Heaven and Earth are connected by a single thread, and despite the differences, at the core, it's a unified whole. 3 elements, 1 essence. Energy is born in Dongcheon and circulates through the Run and Do channels. The Great Circle technique is one of the most difficult, but the guy's already started studying it in Wanland. He'll be fine. Opening his eyes, he felt, now at the peak of his powers. The Jun and Du meridians opened fully, and the spiritual body was cleansed of all impurities. The system window reported, legendary level reached. Success. The guy had mastered the knowledge of an ancient martial art. He now possessed a 5th-ranked technique, the art of the unity of heaven and earth. This technique can be perfected, and the body has already started to change. The system indicated the transformation had begun. The body had entered a state of unity. The energy reserve was divided into 3 parts, upper, middle, and lower dantian. The energy was now distributed by level. All of this was recorded in the stats window, and the guy realized this was his first really big step. After a while, the boys entered the portal again, where a giant toothy worm burst out of the bowels. He was ready to pounce on them the second he did. Guy has developed one of the most powerful techniques of the Huang country, the art of connecting heaven and earth. At that moment, they are attacked by a huge worm, tearing up the ground and creating real chaos among the fighters. And now the man urgently needs to regain the lost techniques of movement, otherwise the outcome of the fight will be deplorable. The protagonist abruptly rushed forward, rushing towards the giant monster, and used the Iron Fist technique, and then activated the Unbending Will ability while expending as much as 58 units of chi energy. And although the guy was pleased with the power of the blow he had struck, inside he realized the price for it was too high. It had been 3 months since he had started learning this technique, but perhaps its secrets were still not fully revealed. The protagonist shrouded his body in a dense mantle of mana, and then moved forward, in search of an opportunity that would forever change the course of battle and leave a mark on history. The system window suddenly announced he had unlocked a new technique, a level 55 martial art known as the 8 Iconic Step, a step that was the stuff of legends. The man punched the monster, dotted with teeth, and tossed the worm aside, causing the creature to fly into a rage. And Ion realized at that moment he was in perfect form today, and every step he took was filled with power. Chang Hyuk felt that he might never catch up with this guy. And Instructor Char, at heart, couldn't help but admire his polished movements and ability to conserve resources. Is it possible that he could become a truly outstanding master in such a short time? Monsters began to break through from different directions, flooding the desert, and the guy, as if gliding in the wind, sidestepped them, delivering blows imbued with the power of a demon. And in the next instant, there was a bloody explosion. Blood whipped around, leaving scarlet marks in the sand like a mural of doom. The guy didn't even notice. How exactly did they manage to destroy so many opponents? Everything was happening as if in a dream. He caught the surprised, almost admiring looks of his companions. 2 weeks in continuous training inside the portals flew by like one busy day. All teams successfully completed the course, except for the third group, which was always lagging behind in every direction, although it had happened before. But this time their flow was able to exceed expectations and deliver an outstanding result. After a while, Instructor Char expressed her approval to the entire squad. From now on, no one will dare call these fighters mere recruits without experience. Now, their successes had become known, and the top guilds had already taken notice of them. Each has a different path open to them, but for Instructor Char, they will always remain her students. She reminded them that they don't have fame and titles yet, but being able to protect people is an honor in itself. Instructor Char believed they would make the right choice that would not lead to regrets. That was the end of the training. They had given their best, working to the best of their abilities. Ion rushed to the woman and burst into tears, hugging her with all sincerity, realizing that without the support of her mentor, she would never have been able to put herself out there like that. Instructor Char was genuinely pleased, for she was honored to walk beside these guys all the way to the end of the road. Still, Ion worried, would she ever see her mentor again? What if she didn't even have a smartphone to text? Instructor Char said, if the fates were favorable, they will surely hear of her, perhaps even in the rustle of the desert wind. These words only moved Ion more deeply, and the tears came with renewed force. Chang Hyuk wasn't left out either. Instructor Char knew of his criminal record, but never rebuked him. She saw his becoming an awakened as an attempt to regain lost honor. But the lad himself felt no honor or noble intentions. After all, the only thing he wanted was a lot of money, without thinking about the meaning of her admonitions. Chang Hyuk cried, realizing that he could have made an honest living, but chose the path of profit, full of lies. But suddenly his tears stopped. The instructor never once in the whole time expressed either contempt or shame for him. A man's past does not define who he is. Let him remember Lander's ordeal. Now he had nothing more to regret or mourn the past for. The woman advised that she should channel her energies into protecting others. And if he does, perhaps redemption will be found, and she promised to watch him. The protagonist felt extremely honored to fight under such a mentor. They exchanged a firm handshake, and Char, looking into the boy's eyes, promised to meet him on the battlefield. The weather that day was truly clear, as if the sun was blessing their farewell to Shahar. Now, the guys are going to go through the hunter registration with the association. After all, each awakened person received a different rank from 1 to 13. There was only one rank 13 wielder and 5 who had reached rank 12 strength. These 6 men were South Korea's shield, keeping the enemy from invading. The protagonist wondered what path of defense he himself would take, considering that not even every rookie was capable of reaching the first rank. The employee tiredly pronounced the ranking result, and the guy was amazed at the core. It was an unexpected result. A message popped up on the screen. He had gotten rank 6. The world 8 appear in the next shot. They were considered the pinnacle of the human race, the ideal of fighting power. These were the awakened ones that had reached the legendary 13th rank, a true elite that even kings bowed down to. One particularly gifted young man stood out among them. He had completed the training course and had barely celebrated his 20th birthday. This non-guild-affiliated loner had obtained rank 4 and was relentlessly mopping up portals as if he was an army in his own right. The name of this exceptional warrior is Baek Mahak. Such a rapid ascent has never been witnessed in Korea or the world. The guy realized that his own result had managed to surpass the established record of Baek Mahak, which was a shock. The office worker asked for a short wait, promising to complete the registration and issue a hunting license soon. The young man had not expected that there were still hunters with such monstrous strength and level on the planet. He recalled how the Alliance of Worlds had rated the potential of Earthlings at an average level, inferior even to the elves. And the leaders of the Alliance were celestial beings, considered the absolute pinnacle in the hierarchy of the races of the entire universe. The human race was in a middling position, and the prospect of facing demons was only a theory. The hierarchy of power in the galaxy was built on a scale set by the celestial race, and Earthlings were in the shadows for now. But the pace of humanity's development was becoming threatening. The people of Earth were evolving faster than all others. The employee handed the guy a wristband, informing him that the license was ready and he could now review the data. The young man put the bracelet on, saw the mana emission, and a system window appeared in front of his eyes with the characteristics of what he took to be a magical phenomenon. The attendant explained that the bracelets are created by dwarves and the spells for them are cast by elven spellcasters. The guy was impressed with the quality of the artifact, and the clerk curiously asked if he had any questions. Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice called out to the young man, and turning around, he saw Shinwu standing next to him. Shinwu apologized for the suddenness of it, and after activating his bracelet, he showed his license, in which the 11th rank shone, which amazed the guy. This fact aroused the young hunter's surprise, and Shinwu, like an old friend, was happy to meet such a promising newcomer. He expressed a desire to socialize a bit. An upbeat music played in the office, as if to set the tone for the conversation. Shinwu invited the guy to sit down, promising to treat him to something especially delicious, as if he was glad to have a guest. A loud melody caught the hunter's attention, while Shinwu, not paying attention, continued to go about his daily business. The guy didn't like this noisy environment. The unexpected heater in the office surprised the hunter, but Shinwu only mumbled to ignore it. He was sensitive to the cold, and it was starting to get chilly outside. And the latter came to the conclusion that before him was obviously a very peculiar person with non-trivial habits. After a couple minutes, Shinwu poured coffee into a glass and offered treat, claiming that this drink is a delight to foreigners and he himself adores it. He asked if the guy minded, and the guy, though he recognized regular instant coffee, didn't refuse. Shinwu didn't like having someone else prepare his drink. His assistants were busy with more important things, and he wasn't clumsy. The guy was beginning to wonder what Shinwu was getting at, what his agenda was, and what was behind this friendliness. Shinwu noticed that the guy wasn't the type who liked to waste time talking without meaning to, and that pleased him. He offered the young hunter to join the Awakened Association, but he briefly and firmly declined. Shinwu noted to himself that the man in front of him was of a straightforward nature. It was evident from the start. He was not surprised. Hunters rarely seek associations, and so he asked a new, more pertinent question. The guy interrupted him and informed him up front that he wasn't interested in guilds and wasn't planning on joining anything. Shinwu was amazed. Could the guy really be able to read minds? But the young man only remarked that he merely sensed the impending question and added that he had no intention of leaving the country. These words pleased Shinwu, for he himself was loyal to his native Korea and understood this young warrior. The guy surprised him, especially considering he had recently come out of a deep coma and was just starting down the path. Shinwu wanted to know what the hunter's purpose was. If possible, he wanted to help in any way he could. Later, the young man paced the street, remembering the vice president of the Awakened Association who had made an impression. He hoped to get answers from him, but his thoughts went back to Chang Hyuk and Yoon. How were they doing? A notification of new messages appeared on the screen, and upon opening it, the guy saw a cute photo of his friends, and with it, the news that they had reached the 3rd rank. The young hunter rejoiced. Now, they would not be bored, and the way to the peaks became closer for them. He sent them a congratulatory message and wished them to continue moving forward with the same confidence and drive. But suddenly, a piercing stream of energy was felt from behind, and the guy immediately realized it's not just a feeling. Something dangerous is obviously going on here. A bright light caught his eye, and the hunter realized that he must urgently find out the source of this phenomenon. Soon he came running toward the building, where a mysterious portal had opened, the origin of which, even to him, seemed inexplicable. City services notified the portal was open, and citizens were asked to head to the shelter at Shinshin subway station, keeping calm. A rank 5 portal appeared in close proximity to the station. This caused alarm. The security officer began organizing the evacuation and directed people to a safe shelter, reporting that 10 people had already been pulled into the portal and could be on the other side. It was decided to let the 5 awakened ones pass. Immediately, a group of 5 fighters rushed toward the portal, ready to engage the unknown threat. The townspeople crowded around the portal, confused and gripped with anxiety. They didn't know what to do except hope for the hunters' imminent arrival. The boy looked around in surprise. Was no one even trying to help those inside? Several of the men glanced over, as if they didn't understand how this man could not know the obvious. Civilians were urgently told to take cover. One of the hunters wondered if they were facing an awakened man. The silver bracelet gave away his status. The look of surprise on their faces betrayed that the man's rank was higher than they had expected. He coldly confirmed his affiliation with the hunters. A young hunter named Kim Yumin called himself a third-rank guard and explained that the others hadn't arrived yet. Would this guy really go there alone? The man recalled that in case of real danger, the guards had the right to enter the portal first, without waiting for the others. Kim Yumin nodded, but still clarified, only under really critical circumstances. The guy frowned. In his opinion, wasn't an obvious emergency right now? The portal was open, and lives were in danger. Yumin only shrugged. He saw no reason to risk the lives of those who might be useful in the future for nothing. A couple of lost civilians is no reason to throw yourself to certain death, especially if you're wearing the mantle of the awakened. These people are special, and the fate of ordinary citizens, alas, not always favorable. The man could hardly contain his contempt. How could anyone say such a thing out loud? But to Yumin, it sounded almost like common sense. The guy thought otherwise. If you have power, hiding is like being a lowlife, regardless of rank. Yumin grinned skeptically, as if he was facing a man who had decided that life no longer interested him. Though the lad did not speak of justice aloud, inwardly he felt at times like this, cowardice is unacceptable. The hunter asked confusedly what this was about, but all he got in response was a hard look of contempt. In his opinion, it is shameful to receive billions from the state and stand idle like an empty decor. The guy snapped out of his seat, whizzing past with such speed that he seemed to dissolve into thin air, leaving Yumin furious and confused. Hunter shouted, reminding him that entering the portal on his own was a direct violation of the law. The man had to stop, otherwise it would be reported to the association, and the consequences would be serious. But the guy didn't see the point in cooperating with cowards. Such better to return to the parental home and try to become at least good sons. Without turning around, he stepped through the portal, leaving behind words full of irritation. Did the man seriously think he was invincible? Yumin was sure that this overconfident fool would be brought to his senses quickly. Let the monsters tell him where he belonged. But suddenly, the hunter's attention was caught by another person walking towards the portal. It was Han Taming. He firmly believed that there was only death inside and little chance of getting out. But unlike Yumin, Temin wasn't going to hide. He felt a responsibility to those in trouble. Inspired by his act, the other hunters followed him, though Yumin did not hide his disdain. In his eyes, they all looked like madmen who suddenly decided they were heroes. Meanwhile, inside the portal, the man sensed that the situation had escalated. He was trapped. The scream that sounded somewhere nearby pierced my consciousness with fear. It sounded like a real plea for help. He began to run away from danger. In a panic, he didn't know what to do. After all, he had his daughter Mayan, his wife, his commitments, and his life insurance. One false step, and the man fell to the ground, straight to the foot of a huge, ominous flower. The monster instantly entangled him with vines, squeezed his leg, and lifted him into the air as if trying to assert its power. But the man knew he could not die. He had not yet fulfilled his role in this world. There was a cry of despair filled with hope. "Someone please save me." From afar, he spotted a figure approaching through the bubbling mana. It was the awakened one, rapidly approaching him. The man prayed to him for salvation, realizing that he was the only one capable of pulling him out of the clutches of death. In front of them was Itel, a monster in the shape of a giant flower with petals colored an ominous purple. It swung its long, lifelike vines like tentacles, unleashing blows. The man wished he had his sword with him. Then he would have dealt with the creature quickly. But even without a weapon, his strength was impressive. With a sharp movement of his foot, he punched through the air, creating a shockwave. He knew exactly how to attack such a monster. The main thing was to choose the moment. The vanishing hail technique allowed the guy to tear through the powerful stalks, depriving the enemy of support. The man who had been saved from death looked at his savior with admiration. This power seemed almost supernatural. But the hunter only nodded, showing that everything was all right now. There was no longer a threat. The rescuer introduced himself as Su Hyuk, a rank 6 wielder. The man thanked the guy profusely for his help. And then in the distance came the voice of other hunters who had just approached. They were rushing to offer support. Han Taming quickly oriented himself, and the first thing he asked was if anyone was hurt. Seeing Itel dead, he couldn't believe that one man had handled such a threat alone. The guy briefly confirmed that the victims had been rescued and was now going to look for the others. He asked the others to stay here and take care of the rescued man. Temin shouted after him. Noticing that the hunter didn't even have a weapon, he took off his sword and held it out. It was particularly effective against Itel. The guy thanked for the help, making sure the weapon was sturdy and reliable. He then swiftly climbed the trees, determining the direction of the next target. You could feel life in the air, a multitude of creatures ahead. Approximately 24 people have been pulled into the portal, but so far only one has been able to be pulled out. The protagonist was determined to save everyone who was trapped and by all means close the portal today. In the portal territory, the main task of any hunter is to destroy the central core of the cosmos energy, the mechanism that triggers the vitality of this pocket of reality and does not allow it to disappear. The heart of a portal can take any form, a sentient being, a mystical artifact, or even an entire building. If the lord of this world is destroyed prematurely, the structure will collapse, and everyone there will be doomed. Therefore, the young hunter must first rescue the survivors, and only then go into battle with the main monster. Fortunately, Tom is not yet lost. There is still hope, and the boy had no intention of giving up. Though he hadn't held a blade in his hands in a long time, the man still remembered every movement honed over the years. The young man furiously descended upon the flower monster, mercilessly cutting away the dense vines with his powerful weapon. Jerk after jerk, like an angry hurricane, he cut his way through the vegetation. A system window appeared in front of my eyes. The hero had reached a new level and activated the body and sword fusion ability. In battle mode, the energy flow of chi was enhanced by 50%, and the power of each strike increased by as much as 30%. It felt similar to the technique of the sword masters from Huani. Only a select few could achieve such a thing. After a while, the young fighter went in search of survivors, and he told his comrades to hold the defenses and wait for him to return with the survivors. One of the hunters glanced doubtfully in his direction, unsure if help was needed after so many victories over Itel. Fortunately, the portal area was relatively small, giving everyone a chance to be rescued. The man promised to bring everyone who was left alive, but he warned that if people were scattered, additional rally points would have to be found. Separation had become necessary, and the safe zones required clear coordination. The guy unfolded the map, at which point Han Taming offered to discount the coordinates via system messenger. The protagonist was genuinely surprised by the capabilities of the bracelet. After all, no one had ever really talked about its functions before, which raised a lot of questions. The transfer was completed successfully, although Han Taming regretted not being able to participate in the battle. He understood not every hunter was suited for combat, and that was okay. It was already important to the young swordsman that his comrades weren't scared and decided to help. Guy suggested they focus on finding and protecting the victims, and he went back into battle. The coordinated actions of the hunters bore fruit. The survivors were rescued quickly and without loss of life. After introducing himself, The young man carefully asked about his wounds and received words of gratitude and hope in return. After a while, Han Tamin broke the happy news that all 22 people had been found and rescued. This news truly inspired the hunter. For now, he could focus solely on the battle. All he had to do was destroy the power source feeding this portal and erase it forever. After a while, he came out to the boss. The creature towered before him, petals stretching upwards, each one 3 meters long. But we couldn't delay. Everything was going to the finale. The blade cut through the air with a whoosh and slammed into the monster's flesh. But the result was deplorable. The enemy withstood the blow. The fighter realized that a normal swordsman's technique is powerless here. The bosses were far more powerful than the other creatures. The guy wasn't a fan of forbidden power, but there was no choice. Before him was the possibility of using a top-grade technique powered not by the body, but by the will itself. A demonic sword technique capable of not just killing, but ripping the soul out of the body. If the young man manages to fully unleash this power, he will become almost invincible. But the danger lay in her dark nature. She had to be handled with care. Right now, his only enemy was a flower demon named Itel. It was to him that the deadly blow of the demonic technique was addressed. A blow that pierces the mind and cuts the threads of life. He killed the biggest boss of this portal with that one punch. The system notified the level growth again. The hero's power had increased. Inwardly, he fought the onslaught of the sinister will, but spiritual fortitude prevented the darkness from overpowering him completely. His new passive ability granted him immunity to powerful mental attacks. This gift amazed the fighter, for with such skill, paths to incredible possibilities opened up. He was now perfectly proficient in a rank 5 martial art, and, having cleared the mind of darkness, managed to single-handedly destroy this warped world, earning the title of Destroyer. Meanwhile, outside, the comrades standing at the exit were uneasy with anxiety. Every minute without him turned into an eternity. The protagonist relayed the message that he was okay and was soon out. But one of the hunters was already beginning to prepare for the worst. Han Taming agreed. The delay had been too long, which didn't bode well. The protagonist briefly thanked for the sword, who proved to be a reliable and invaluable ally in the battle. Han Taming admitted that he had put all his savings into the weapon. It was a sword forged by the dwarves, and he was glad it had helped. But then the hunter was approached by the head of the KR Guild, a hunter of the 7th rank, named Kim Min. He reported that the group was about to enter the portal to do a sweep and suggested that the hero join them. But they were stopped by an aide, pointing to the disappearing funnel. The world froze, everyone realized. This guy cleared the portal completely and single-handedly. It was unthinkable. He had exceeded expectations, becoming a true beast of battle. Kim Min wasn't thrilled that the main character not only managed to close the portal on his own, but he also came back safe and sound, becoming a hero in the eyes of the assembled people, which made him irritated. In the official's opinion, all of this was certainly impressive, but the fact remained that the guy broke the rules, since he was strictly forbidden to go inside the portal alone, which was clearly stated in the laws. Han Dae-min had a hard time understanding such logic, and simply told him to stop harassing the protagonist. After all, he wasn't alone. He was accompanied. However, the man was not going to back down. He could barely contain his anger, for he was sure that he had indeed violated the charter, and despite everything he still entered the portal alone. Han Dae-min quickly realized that it was useless to argue with him. But Kim kept bending his neck, claiming that he had warned everyone. The guy was going to go in on his own, but no one listened to him. He was loudly indignant, insisting that if everyone did as they pleased, then the laws would simply become meaningless. Citizens began to gather in the streets, watching the unfolding scene in amazement and unable to understand why accusations were being made instead of gratitude. People did not hide their indignation. How can representatives of the association allow themselves such behavior in front of everyone? These words hurt the already irritated Kim Min a lot. His face darkened, and he became even more angry. In a fit of rage, the official decided to show the awakened man what happens to those who dare to ignore the statutes, grabbed him by his clothes, and growled a threat. The young man met his gaze calmly, not moving from his seat or showing any aggression in response. Kim Yoo-min said that if he dared to hit him, it would be another offense, and he would personally make sure that the guy goes to jail and write letters of complaint to his mom from there. The protagonist silently listened to this stream of verbal aggression until suddenly someone's fist slammed into the official's stomach. Kim Yoo-min bent in half and collapsed to the ground, losing control of the situation. It was Kim In-yu. He was furious at the official's absurd behavior and thought it would be better if he thanked the hero for saving lives and closing the portal. The man loudly declared that it was the height of ingratitude to accuse a man who had saved dozens of people of a crime. And anyway, did he even know why awakened ones existed? Kim Yoo-min didn't even realize that the KR guild leader himself, the one who had struck him, was standing in front of him. Meanwhile, another person, Shin Woo, came outside and urged everyone to calm down. He had heard the entire conversation. This man, vice president of the Awakened Association, he began by apologizing to the townspeople for not being able to react in time, promising that this would not happen again. If someone is injured, they are entitled to free treatment at any hospital cooperating with the association. All costs will be covered. One elderly man, struggling to contain his emotions, said that without the young hero they would no longer exist and asked that he not be penalized. Another man cried, admitting he never even hoped to see his family again and is convinced the guy doesn't deserve the censure. Shin would try to calm him down by promising that no sanctions would be applied against the hero. He suggested that everyone update their bracelets so they work correctly and added that if the association goes back to the old ways, no one else will allow it. The young hero was surprised at such a fair decision, not expecting it to be resolved this way. Shin Woo said that single status officially allowed entering the portal without a team, and the hero hadn't violated anything. In addition, Soo Hyuk, who performed the feat, saved many lives and therefore deserves to be rewarded. He invited the audience to give the hero a round of applause, and the crowd responded happily, bursting into applause. Thanks to the intervention of the vice president, the conflict was extinguished before it got out of hand. For his behavior, Kim Yoo-min was temporarily stripped of his Awakened license for 3 months and sent for retraining, after which he was expected to serve on the front lines for 6 months. But the young hero was promoted to the 8th rank and given a cash reward of as much as 20 million won. Although the association has a modest budget, they put out as much as they could, which is very generous. However, the guy honestly admitted that even this amount seems excessive to him and asked not to worry. The only thing he asked was to not mention his name in the news or make him a star. Shin Woo was surprised at such modesty, but readily agreed to honor the request. Guy thanked him profusely for his support. After that, he went home and soon found himself on the floor, looking at the rare mana stones. Each was worth about 80 million won, and he got 2 at once, an amazing bonus. He remembered that it was Han Dae-min who had handed him the stones, because he himself had not had time to collect the loot while saving people. In the end, another 160 million after tax was added to the money from the association, totaling 200 million. And all this wealth the protagonist got in just one busy but fruitful day. Now was left to save another 300 million to finally take out a mortgage and fulfill the family's dream of buying their own home. The young man brought up the system menu and began to study the flood of information that descended upon him after the mission was completed. Suddenly, he noticed that a simplified display mode had become available and activated it. All details were now available on command, making it much easier to navigate. The guy was interested in what exactly gives the title Small Worlds Destroyer, and got the answer. When entering the portal alone, his stats increased by 5%. This pleased him, because if such bonuses come with a low-level title, what does the future hold? He also unlocked access to a host of new skills: 8-step Tai Chi, Demonic Sword, Earth Energy Strikes, and others. The guy was surprised at so many techniques, especially the passive ability to resist mental attacks. Illusion magic and spatial manipulation were considered the most difficult in Huang. Now he could easily resist them. For an ordinary person on Earth to achieve such a thing, one had to achieve absolute harmony of spirit. And the protagonist got this state effortlessly, just bundled with one of his new skills. If a guy can strengthen harmony and increase resistance, even the strongest illusion won't be able to break his mind. Sua suddenly entered the room, startling her brother, who was completely absorbed in reading the information. According to her, the guy has been muttering something to himself for a while now, to which he responded by telling her to ignore it. He wasn't quite sure why she'd even stopped by, but Sua had brought sliced fruit. In her opinion, it was time for a snack. After a while, everyone was sitting on the couch in front of the TV, enjoying apples and relaxing. The news was reporting a new portal that Sua was near today, and horrifying things were happening there. People fled in panic. Hunters rushed to the scene to stop the impending disaster. The protagonist was surprised, as if he hadn't expected the portal to be so dangerous and unstable. He had asked not to reveal his name to the press, so for now, there was no need to worry. But the guy realized that hiding his involvement forever would not work anyway. Sooner or later the truth would come out. He touched the bracelet machiniatically, and it immediately caught his sister's attention. Perhaps it was time to come clean, for it was getting harder and harder to keep the truth from Sua. But he realized that even if he confessed, she still wouldn't be thrilled with his participation in such events. The girl suddenly grabbed his hand and asked him what it was, looking closely at the bracelet. Sua was shocked, for she had long suspected something like this, and now it seemed to be confirmed. She hardly realized that her brother had indeed turned out to be an awakened one who fights portals. The main character has recently found himself in a coma. How hard it is to believe that he is now even capable of it. The young man knew what he was walking into, which is why he made the decision to get involved in this story despite any obstacles. Sua couldn't believe her eyes because he already had a silver bracelet on his wrist, a symbol of the 6th rank or higher, even though he had only recently experienced awakening. The man, as if in between, informed me that he would soon have a gold bracelet. However, Sua immediately asked her not to say such nonsense to her, not to try to deceive her, even though the guy was really telling the pure truth, because his gift was rare and his abilities were immense. Sua continued to brush that thought aside until the news reported the stunning information. It was clear that a certain gifted awakened person had played a key role in eliminating the portal at Shinshin Station. Although the association has so far refrained from official comment, the top leadership had already openly stated this guy could repeat the path of Baek Mu-hak himself, a legendary warrior of the 8th rank. With a sinking heart, Sua wondered to herself, what if it was him? And if so, how strong was he? The host said with a serious look that this young man was the first person in the history of not only Korea, but also the world to receive the 8th rank on the day of his awakening. It wasn't just his abilities. A guy with an incredible sense of justice threw himself into the thick of it without hesitation. Sua experienced a real shock when she heard about the 8th rank, not believing her own ears. Meanwhile, the awakened man himself looked a little displeased, for he had asked the vice president not to talk about him. The man he first rescued from the death trap said in an interview that at that moment he was thinking only about his family, his daughter, and his beloved wife, wanting only one thing, to survive. When that young man appeared, tears came to my eyes. Relief gripped my body like the warmth of the spring sun. He honestly admitted that since childhood he had not believed in heroes, and yet this time his faith was reawakened. Nevertheless, the guy himself could not consider himself a hero in any way. After all, he was sure every awakened person was obliged to do just that, without hesitation. Since that day, tension had been in the air, as if something was about to happen. This world might not be lost yet. Everyone hoped that this guy would succeed, because the news about the genius awakened traveled around the globe. Shinwoo strictly followed the man's request and did not reveal his name, convincing even the survivors to remain silent. In response, the awakened man expressed his gratitude, and Shinwoo remarked, "Let him just enjoy the moment, because despite the chaos and dangers, he had performed an act worthy of legends." Shinwoo had become a sincere fan of this nameless hero, and if he had less responsibilities, he would have started a fan club without a second thought. When the man asked with a smile if he was the one writing all those enthusiastic comments, Shinwoo replied cryptically, as if hinting his identity was shrouded in mystery. Discussing it all with Sua, the boy didn't mind. It might be worth it to confuse his parents a bit. After all, if they learn the whole truth, they will not stand it. Their nerves simply cannot cope with such a revelation. The next goal was clear. The gold bracelet must be obtained as soon as possible. After all, it is a symbol of the 9th rank and above, entitling you to government protection and privileges. The third and equally important rule is to stay out of trouble at all costs. Even Sua realized that there was no way to keep this guy down for long. But if he really listened to what she said, then it really mattered to him. Nevertheless, the young man realized that if things continued like this, sooner or later the people around him would begin to recognize him, and there would be no way to hide. The solution came quickly. He decided to buy a mask. Even though it sounds silly, it's better to look ridiculous than to be the victim of other people's attention. Meanwhile, the internet was in complete turmoil. Users were making theories, suspecting conspiracies. But for the man, it has become something habitual, like breathing that just happens by itself. In Huang country, rumors always hovered behind his back like the winds that were always blowing. In 1 month alone, the guy had single-handedly cleared 20 portals, an accomplishment worthy of legends. Although there was no word about it in the press, people couldn't help but notice the mysterious masked man silently leaving the portals. And the public began to question, because this nameless hero was no longer a myth. He became a reality, stepping out of the shadows. All eyes turned to him. Who was he, this mysterious protector? Meanwhile, within the walls of the Paictusan Guild, the guy was not finding a place to be. His thoughts were as heavy as rocks that pressed down on his head, giving him no rest or peace. Sayul, with a note of annoyance, advised him to stop pressing his phone buttons relentlessly. The young man did not understand what he was being asked to do, for him inaction was a real torture, worse than pain. Sayul couldn't even imagine that in front of him was the future leader of the strongest guild in all of Korea. He remarked that if the fellow was so impatient, perhaps it was time to think about meeting. It wouldn't do any good otherwise anyway. The boy wondered if it was a joke, to which Sayul nodded discreetly. It seemed like it was time. It's useless to sit and torture yourself waiting. If the meeting happens, you won't be able to ignore it. Suddenly, ice shackled the young man's legs. Sayul's antics had made him angry. Because no one warned me not to act with such haste. Calls came in, messages too, but there was no response, which made it clear that the guy showed no interest in the guild. The young man was seething with anger. Would they really just watch the nameless one slip from their grasp like sand slipping through their fingers? Baekma Hak's name sounded like a taunt. He manipulated the situation as he pleased. The guy in the austere suit was sure that the nameless man was the hero everyone was looking for. But even if that turned out not to be the case, the significance of that fact was not diminished in the slightest. Soo-hyuk's potential was similar to what Nameless showed, which only meant one thing. Events would inevitably lead them to clash. During training, Sayul noticed that the guy was too influenced by other people's opinions, and it fit well with his character. This man could have made a contract with anyone. He was subject to no one. He was free. Trying to pressure him is a mistake worthy only of inexperienced amateurs. But there was one, Shahar, Califuriate. The boy wondered why her name had come up. Sayul calmly explained. She was his mentor. Although the woman herself denied it, there was definitely a special bond between them, and their friendship was as strong as steel. The guy understood perfectly well. His charisma might not be enough because she was not just a person, but something much more than one could imagine. Sayul knew that she could not be swayed or persuaded, for she was not only this man's mentor, but other outstanding awakened ones as well. He handed over recordings of calls that included the hero's voice, those who had actually been in touch with him and communicated regularly. The guy studied the list and didn't hesitate to notice that the company's offer had already been sent to Ian. Imsa Yul was well aware, other than family, it was the only one that truly mattered to him. Maybe he should talk to her. The chance of success was worth the risk. The man gave his permission, but he didn't know what the next step would be. Imsa Yul assumed that she would sign a contract with their guild, and that would definitely raise their chances of winning to a new level. The guy clarified, and what happens afterward? Will they make contact with the Nameless One directly? The plan proposed by the scheming Imsa Yul seemed quite tempting to him, and he immediately gave the order to start without delay. After a while, a man named Soo Hyuk stepped into the portal with the unconcealed intention of making some money. Fought giant praying mantises, wondering if the critters were using the distortion of space and time. Utilized the battle technique known as the Iron Fist, piercing through enemies with its indestructible power. He ended the fight with a blow of destructive darkness. There was no hope of escape from the monster. Finding himself amongst a pile of corpses, the man received a system message. His level had increased. Full synchronization with the A-Rang technique called Iron Fist was also achieved. Glancing around at the energy streams pulsing around his body, the man muttered about the need for growth. It was as far away from the ideal as the moon. The path was difficult and thorny. Soo Hyuk extracted the mana stone from the body of the defeated mantis using his dagger. A smile slid across his face. The day was clearly going well. The monsters, despite their size, were of no use. Only the front paws were valuable, which he took. The craftsmen who were willing to pay 10 million won for a single pair came to mind. Such customers were valued. Packed the spoils in 2 bags. The preliminary estimate was at least 50 million. A strange object hovered over the battlefield, emitting dangerous energy radiation. Apparently, this was the epicenter of the portal's cosmic power, a threat that had to be eliminated. Without saying goodbye, the boy threw the dagger precisely at the target. The center burst into flames and shattered into dust. He threw the bags into the ATV and took the driver's seat, wasting no time. The guy just drove away from here like he was in a Fast and Furious movie. Left behind a ruined portal with military personnel stationed at the entrance. Their reaction was no surprise. Once again, Nameless had conducted the purge alone. To them, he had long ago become more than just a man, an embodied storm that had broken through into this world. While driving the ATV, the man reflected that the new purchase had paid for itself. Now it was possible to haul tons of booty without fear of overloading. Equipment is half of a loner's success. The machine's dwarven build inspired confidence, sturdy hull, powerful engine, enchantment for payload. Even if the 800 million price tag seemed crazy, it paid for itself more and more with each raid. Upon arrival at the correct building, he heard Ocean W's voice on the phone. He was already aware of the successful sweep. Soo Hyuk confirmed the information. There are 2 pairs of mantis paws and several mana stones on hand. Ocean promised to send specialists for evaluation. The man, in turn, asked about the portals of ranks 6 to 7. The answer wasn't encouraging. All the good places had long since been bought up by the guilds. Only low-ranked portals remained. Maybe it's time to allow yourself some rest. Though, work takes too much energy. Ocean offered to go up to the office for coffee, but the man declined, promising to stop by later. Ocean promised to deliver a production estimate in person as soon as the numbers are known. Soo Hyuk leisurely moved along the street, mentally returning to his goal of reaching rank 9 as quickly as possible. Only then will he be able to reveal the truth to his parents, without fear or withholding. His gaze fell on his phone screen, a message from Soa, the girl telling him to get back immediately. He swaps and sees a message from Baekhyun as well. She had received an offer from the Baekdu San Guild. The terms were so favorable that it was hard to believe. Asked for advice on whether to agree right away or whether it would be better to deal with the guild's internal politics first. Was excited to the core and, if things worked out, suggested we celebrate at a restaurant. Soo-hyuk replied with a slight smile. Let him report. Once everything is approved, he'll try to be. After a short correspondence, the man ordered food from one of the empty cafes. Too early for lunch. That was the silence that reigned inside. He heard the scraps of someone else's conversation. The two were discussing Nameless. It turned out that he had recently visited the association, having surrendered mana stones and paws. Even a vice president got in on the sale. It's not every day you see a rookie with that kind of power. No surprise, the guy, albeit recently awakened, had already caught the attention of the powerful. Obviously, influential forces are trying to gain his loyalty. After all, the competitors are not slumbering. If he goes abroad, there will be scandals in the press. To lose such a person would be tantamount to a catastrophe. It was even said that he was capable of outshining Bake Mohawk himself, a living legend. They changed the subject to Tron-On, a mysterious world that had never been explored. The portal has been open for 3 months, and the center of energy remains unknown. People are nervous. It's strange that there are still no protests, given the tensions surrounding the situation. But more interestingly, the association has made contact with the elves of Elfenheim. The new elven instructor had only recently arrived. Her beauty was almost supernatural. The elves have created a device capable of identifying the center of portal energy within a kilometer radius. After finishing his meal, the man approached the cafe employee to pay for his order. The usual hustle and bustle reigned outside. There were no more free portals left. There was no work to be done for the time being. However, going to Tron-On alone was still too risky. But perhaps now was the chance for a breakthrough. Picked up the phone and dialed Ocean's number. The line was busy. Soo-hyuk grinned after realizing that everyone was up to their necks in business. But if you hurry, you can bypass the guild hunters and snatch a score. Park Moo-ji approached the man. Soo-hyuk met his gaze. So much fame at a young age, no wonder the guy got a little arrogant. He called the young man by name, grinning. Nameless Hero was quite the appropriate nickname. The man stated that he is a busy man and added that he doesn't have a lot of time, so he will speak to the point. Does the guy know who is in front of him? Soo-hyuk was genuinely surprised and made it clear that he didn't know. An annoyed Moo-ji called out his name, noting with a tinge of bitterness that his interlocutor didn't seem inclined to socialize. The protagonist glanced at him with a slight chuckle, silently letting him know that he wasn't much for idle chatter himself. Is it a complex or a stubborn desire to prove something? In a world where power decides everything, such questions look naive. The mage suddenly began to emit a dark, pressurizing energy with a hint that if this was where things were going, he would show what true power was. Guy summoned a dragon woven from dense shadow and directed the creature straight at the opponent. Soo-hyuk deftly dodged the monster's first blast of fury, realizing that he possessed an ability that made him almost invisible, a shadow shaman moving at lightning speed. Not surprisingly, such a technique became his primary weapon in battle. Easily evading the attacks, he realized that holding back wasn't going to work. He was going to have to make a real effort. Or get the hell out of here. Moo-ji smirked as he continued to cast magic, noting to himself how deftly his opponent dodged the deadly blows. But, he added mentally, tricks alone aren't everything. Eels can't be trusted. The boy felt anger boiling in his chest and clenched his teeth, snapped into a swift dash, intent on ending this farce. Concentrating his strength in his fists, he rushed forward. But the attack could not be completed. A new outbreak of aggression from the creature was too close. Using an illusory technique, he created copies of himself, sending them into battle to surround the enemy from different directions. Slightly dumbfounded, the mage was surprised to note what was happening. This was something he had clearly not expected. He threw flaming spells, radiating excitement dash. Looks like things are starting to taste like a real fight. The protagonist appreciated the moment and realized, now, while the enemy was distracted by deceptions, was the time for a decisive attack. But Moo-ji quickly oriented himself, and while changing the direction of the flames, he managed to spot the real enemy. The boy noted to himself, Even though fire is magical, it remains fire, and thus has a weakness. With a movement of his foot, he summoned a deadly gust, a deadly wind that could disperse even enchanted flames. Visibly disturbed, the mage caught himself thinking that this newcomer had only awakened a couple months ago and was already doing this sort of thing. The guy stood in a fighting stance, and his entire figure was filled with a powerful aura that heralded the release of a secret martial arts technique. He unleashed the 100-step divine fist, a legendary technique that carried an air elemental strike behind it. Mu Ji miraculously stayed on his feet, but when I opened my eyes, I saw, as two of his opponent's fingers were already resting on his chest. With a serious look, he made it clear that this was the point of death. Touching it meant the end. The shocked mage froze, not knowing how to react. Such an art does not belong to magic, it is something else. The guy calmly informed him that he didn't understand the reasons for his appearance, but hoped their paths would not cross again. Relations between them and his guild are already far from friendly. There will be no more warnings, only death. Mu Gue shouted, challengingly dropping his enemy's name, and wondered if he realized that the entire 8-world structure was after him. Does he seriously think these factions are noble heroes? Maybe he has the power, but it would be suicide to tackle this thing alone. He needs to join them, then all doors will open. Alone he's doomed, but with the support of the guild he can accomplish anything. They're waiting for the bastard. A short time later, Su Hyuk staggered into the dark courtyard, coughing heavily as drops of blood dripped onto the stones beneath his feet. It felt as if an unknown force was bursting out from within, squeezing out all life. Most likely, he had gone too far in the final phase of the battle, and now the next phase of the plan must be urgently implemented. After all, just now he was facing one of the 5 awakened 12th rank Koreans, and a bout with such a fighter doesn't go to waste. If the fight had dragged on, he would not have seen victory, but there were no regrets. The main thing was that he had managed to damage the arrogant upstart. Plus, the 8 worlds are now after his head, which means it's time to prepare for a serious confrontation. Unlike Mu Ji, they will be much harder to stop. You have to do whatever it takes to have a chance in this fight. Parallel to these events at the airport, Vladimir Andreyev appeared, accompanied by security guards. Baek Chumun hurried to meet him and addressed him respectfully, calling him master. Those around him looked on in amazement. Someone in the crowd whispered that the man was something of an actor. No one knew exactly who he was, but his face clearly seemed vaguely familiar to many. Chumun regretfully apologized for the flood of people, explaining that if he had known in advance, he could have warned. Vladimir frowned, noting that he had no time for ceremonies. He himself hadn't expected to have to do everything in a hurry. They go to the car together, and on the road, the man asked who was hiding behind the guise of Nameless. Chumun turned to him and told him that a few months ago the guy came out of a coma he had been in for a long time. He was reported as a casualty of the portal incident, but began to rapidly increase in level after awakening. Vladimir inquired as to his age, and after recognizing the figure, he said thoughtfully that this was why he had come here. The upcoming battle promised to be truly exciting. When will Baek Mahak show up? Chumun mentioned what he heard. We shouldn't expect this guy before next spring, so we'll have to be patient. Vladimir exhaled irritably, showing impatience, and noted with a chuckle that the man had apparently decided to disappear from sight for a year again. A real training maniac, no different, just as he was. The driver looked in the mirror, and he stared into the reflection, realizing that before him sat the Prince of Blood himself, the legendary Lord of the Night, the Russian star of the Hunters, one of the powerful representatives of the 8 worlds, so there was no point in being surprised by his arrogance. Vladimir intercepted the young man's gaze, and, without concealing the irony, he wondered if his tone had angered the gentleman. Chumun turned around and noticed that the chauffeur was too young to get involved in this level of conversation. The man squinted his eyes mockingly and added that, no matter how hard he looked at it, he was right. That stubborn boy had run away to the mountains, and now he had to fly here. Does the boy mind? The driver shook his head demurely, and Vladimir patted him on the shoulder with a lazy grin. adding that he could use a little relaxation. His face had become quite stony. Chumun realized that the situation was starting to escalate and hurriedly announced that he would take care of the impertinent young man himself later. Vladimir reminded him that he had known Bekmahak since the time when he had been running under the table, barely reaching the seat. School was out of the question then. And now some puppy of this former toddler dares to contradict him? The driver frowned and sharply demanded that the man dare not insult his master. Magic began to slowly flow from Vladimir as he wondered, did that really sound like an insult? The flow of energy reached the young man, and he immediately felt his body paralyzed. He was completely immobilized. Any more, and he'd just be gone. His body trembled with uncontrollable fear, and Chumun, catching the change, asked what had happened. The driver stared ahead and wasn't sure if he had just stood at the edge of the line, or was it just a trick of the senses. Chumun discreetly clarified if there would be no objection if they made a quick stop. Vladimir agreed with a lazy chuckle, noting that just look at this guy, pale as chalk, still alive, so it's not as bad a day as it could have been. The next morning, Soo-hyuk woke up in bed and immediately felt the painful echoes of yesterday's battle. His insides still felt like they were burning from within. I think he's really overreacting. If he keeps jumping through portals and getting into fights at the same pace, it'll just drive you insane with this overwhelming sensation of pain. You have to stop and recover. His mom walked into the room, and she was surprised to notice that he'd slept at home again. It hadn't happened in a long time, and it suddenly coincided with her day off. My father came up next and suggested a family outing. Since everyone was free, why not spend the day together? Sua ran up to them with a joyful squeak, glowing with happiness, and joined in the offering. The guy shifted his gaze to his loved ones and clarified, "Is it really everyone's day off today?" They nodded in response, and he threw in a half-joking remark. They could have informed him in advance. Then he wouldn't have other things to do that morning. My father, grinning, ironically remarked that he didn't seem to have a job. What other plans could there be? Soo-hyuk, humming, replied that even the unemployed have their own businesses, albeit unofficial ones. The father went on with a thoughtful look that the boy came home late every day and talked about training all the time. Was he hiding something? Soo-hyuk shook his head negatively, but his mother gently slapped her husband on the shoulder, noting that you don't have to know everything, even if you're a parent. Let the boy have personal secrets, too. She winked slyly at her son and clarified if that's how she figured it out. Her father, nodding, admitted that he was just worried, especially now that she was feeling better for the first time in a long time and wanted to get out for some fresh air. He suggested a walk along the Hangang, maybe hit a movie afterwards, and end the day at a cozy restaurant. Sua was enthusiastic about the idea. It had been so long since they had spent time together as a family. Soo-hyuk agreed with a slight smile, noting that in that case, Mom wouldn't have to cook today. The woman squinted her fist, unhappily clarifying what he was trying to say now. Did he think her cooking wasn't up to par? The young man hurriedly excused himself, adding that he was just glad to be able to spare her from her routine. Her mother immediately cheered up, and Sua offered to bring at least something to eat if they were going to the park anyway. As soon as the words escaped her lips, everyone synchronously stared at her father, and the guy involuntarily recognized that he really is the best cook. Father, pleased with the attention, with a chuckle, he stated that he was about to show what he was worth. For now, they can watch TV while he takes care of business in the kitchen. The man started cooking, and Sua wondered admiringly who had taught him how to handle food so perfectly. After a short cooking time, my father proudly placed the dish on the table and loudly announced, "Everything is ready. Today they will have omuresu for breakfast." Soo-hyuk got a big portion, and the boy wondered to himself if it was overkill. My father explained that if you've been practicing all night, you should eat to your heart's content. They began to eat, and the mother said softly that work was a matter of gain, but her son's health was a real happiness for her. Everyone started praising the food, and the guy suddenly felt a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. This house wasn't crowded, it was cozy, but the thoughts still lingered. Maybe it was time to open up. His father, noticing the boy's hesitation, asked if he had anything to say. He had hardly touched his food. Soo-hyuk put the spoon down on the table. I exhaled and acknowledged. Yes, indeed, there was something important I had long wanted to tell you about. Sua immediately caught on to what her brother was going to talk about, and with a swift movement, she made it clear she shouldn't say it out loud. The young man nodded to his sister, wondering where she got such insight. It seemed as if she could read minds. If the guy reveals the truth to them, the parents are terrified that they are once again at risk of losing their son, who has only recently returned from coma. The young man had about 500 million won in his bank account, a pretty substantial sum. With one more loan, he could buy his parents a spacious 30 pyong apartment, just as he had dreamed. But the warning from Muga still echoed in his head. The world 8 would begin hunting him down. To stand up to the likes of them would require not only strength, but also influence. And influence, as we know, requires money. The guy decided to hang on a little longer. It's all for his parents, for his family. After a little while, the whole family got in the car and hit the road, enjoying the rare opportunity to spend the day together. Soo-hyuk watched the passing scenery and noted to himself how much the car was shaking. They needed a new one a long time ago. My sister jabbed her finger out the window, pointing to a brightly colored advertisement, where the awakened flaunted, now a familiar sight. Being an awakened has become prestigious these days. The profession is respected, less dangerous, and some have become celebrities. If she had the strength, perhaps the family would not be living in poverty and would live in wealth and security. The mother nodded understandingly, but added that she didn't want her daughter to carry other people's lives on her conscience. There were more important things. The guy realized it all applied to him. Sua remarked with a sly smile that the beauty of a mother's daughter was also an important indicator of happiness. Wasn't it? The man blushed and asked with slight embarrassment what was going on with the girl today. It was like being switched. When they arrived at the park, the family had a small picnic, enjoying the simple pleasures. Soo-hyuk gazed into the faces of his relatives and realized that it was moments like these that were real life, not fuss and pain. It had been a while since they'd been able to get together as a family. Work, errands, illness. Everything got in the way of these moments. The wasted years fueled the determination within the young man. Now he would do everything possible for their happiness. After the movie, they went to a restaurant, and the mother looked at the sign with doubt. The place was not cheap. The guy, without losing his good-naturedness, informed me that since my sister had purchased the tickets, dinner was his concern. The woman was surprised, not believing that her son could dispose of money so freely. After all, he had recently been out of work. The protagonist explained with a confident smile that everything was under control. He would definitely find a decent job soon. His father wondered with slight anxiety whether there was any need to hurry at all. After all, his body had only just recovered from a severe coma. Soo-hyuk assured him that he felt better than before. Strength was plentiful, and the rest had helped recovery. The mother warmly thanked her son for his efforts and remarked that if it became difficult, let him tell her. When the plates were empty, the guy sighed with a slight sadness, as if he didn't want to let the day go. The parent caught the sadness in the boy's voice and inquired with interest as to what it was that had upset him so much. It appeared that the man was discouraged by how quickly this rare day flew by, like sand through his fingers. The wife laughed and said that her spouse was becoming increasingly sentimental, just like their son. She admitted that such displays of hardiness are sometimes even frightening, too touching. Father looked around the area and wondered where Soo-ah was. The girl still hadn't returned. Soo-hyuk got up from the table and headed off in search of his sister, assuming she might be lingering somewhere nearby. At that moment, Han Aryam slapped Soo-ah. The girl had her friends with her, and they all mocked Soo-ah in unison, saying that such people didn't belong in a rich man's neighborhood. With contempt and disdain, they advised her to just leave and not embarrass herself. And Ryam grabbed the girl by her clothes, and, raising her hand threateningly, she asked who she thought she was. At this moment, Soo-hyuk caught the girl's hand, looking at her with a cold, contemptuous expression. The guy pointed out that the person in front of him was only an illusion, a mask. she wasn't who she said she was. And Ryam squinted her eyes and challengingly asked who he was to meddle in her affairs. The young man didn't hide it. He was Soo-ah's brother, and he wasn't going to allow his sister to be treated like this. Soo-ah got up from the ground, urging her brother not to get involved, saying it was fine, it would be fine. But the young man was seething with rage. He wasn't going to turn a blind eye to the fact that someone had raised a hand against his sister. Dark magic fluttered in the air as he called the offending woman disgusting. Dark energy reached for the girl, filling the air with tension, and the one gripped by panic and the evil aura around her started waving her arms around, screaming as if in a frenzy. Soo-ah couldn't stand it and laughed as if she was watching a circus and wondered if she had imagined the whole thing. And Ryam turned to her in a frenzy, indignant. How dare she laugh at a moment like this? Soo-hyuk's serious face spoke for itself. He would discuss it with his sister privately later. He made it clear that if the girl didn't want any trouble, it would be better for her to leave. But Ryam only snorted and scornfully reminded that they were of the same beggar blood. What could he even do? Soo-hyuk calmly remarked that poverty is no reason to be ashamed. The girl, without losing her smirk, said that in their world it was the other way around. The rich dictate the rules. They decide who can live where and who has the right to speak. If he wants to know why she can kill her sister and get away with it, let him listen. One call, and the rent will go up so much they'll be out on the street. Make him stand up and apologize. The young man was about to reply, but his sister squeezed his sleeve, begging him not to interfere. The guy realized that in front of him was a representative of a rich caste with money and power. But to him, she remained just a spoiled, shouty fool who wanted to seem important. Neither clothes nor status could hide her cheapness. And Ryam jumped up in a rage and hit him with her bag. The young man, without losing his cool, easily intercepted the bag, which pissed the girl off even more. She yelled that he had no idea how much this accessory cost. Damage a stitch and you die. The young man shook the bag with a chuckle and wondered why he was waving it around like a rag then. And Ryam disdainfully declared that the thing was worth more than he made in a month. The guy said it's weird. She looks like a beggar and humiliates everyone. He demonstrably ripped open the bag right in front of her eyes, and an expression of shock contorted the girl's face. It made her fall to the ground, and, with a trembling voice, she asked if what was happening was really real. Soo-hyuk calmly looked at her, smiled slightly, and assured her, "This is not an illusion. This is real life." The girl froze, not believing her eyes. After all, her expensive bag had just been ripped open in front of her. With fury on her face, she pointed her finger at the guy, certain that he should be punished. Two aggressive girls rushed toward the man, waving their fists. But Soo-hyuk effortlessly picked up his sister in his arms, and with grace, as if participating in some dance, dodged all their clumsy attacks. And Ryam turned pale, looking at him with real terror in her eyes, and thought, did this disgusting guy really turn out to be awakened? The man pulled out his cell phone, which he had left on record beforehand, and confidently stated that it was time to see what the video captured. Turns out all of their taunts were captured. Just at that moment, a large sparkling ball flew towards him. But the guy reacted in time, stopping him with one hand without even flinching. With a grin on his face, he looked at the girl, as if to ask if she had a guard here too. Since he keeps talking about his wealth, I'd like to see how the public takes this video online. Made it clear that this was his last warning and she'd better leave her sister alone. Let him be glad he was limited to a torn bag and not something more devastating. Later, when the tension subsided, they sat down on the benches. Soo-ah admitted with a downcast head that she felt very ashamed. She didn't want her brother to see her in such a miserable state. It turned out that they had been in the same class for 3 years, but a friendship never developed. There was some need in the girl from the beginning to humiliate others, a little at first, but by the second year it became unbearable. Her father seemed to be doing well, and it was starting to get annoying, especially after Soo-ah's brother woke up. Besides, Soo-ah herself was not only intelligent, but also beautiful, and irritation in such situations was quite natural. The boy remembered how, upon waking up, he had immediately noted how beautiful she was. He only exhaled heavily, asking not to take his words to heart. His emotions were literally bubbling. Sue raised her head and said, trying to remain calm, that she didn't really care about Ariam. She was too arrogant to deserve even a drop of real anger. However, perhaps it wasn't that simple. It wasn't just envy that was in her gaze. When exchange students came to the school, one young man became interested in Sue and then confessed his feelings to her. But the week before, it was Ariam who dared to confess to him and was rebuffed. Sue, despite the guy's feelings, rejected him. His mother was sick and his brother was in a coma, and there was no time for love back then. And all she could do then was to laugh quietly at the girl, thus avenging all wrongs, though small, but from the heart. The guy irritatedly remarked that he shouldn't have torn the bag, but should have torn the girl's hair out. Embarrassed, Sue blushed but recognized his act was indeed funny. She even smiled, saying that he seemed like a real hero to her at that moment. You could consider it a small retreat before the big win. Days like this don't repeat. If the guy got stronger, he'd have a chance for some real, serious revenge. But it was time to go back. The parents were probably getting worried by now. They headed back, and Soo Hyuk said he would walk his sister home. He'll stop at the store on the way. When a man was already pacing the sidewalk, suddenly, Ariam appeared in front of him again, accompanied by 2 bodyguards. The guy grinned slightly. He hadn't expected to run into her so soon. The girl irritably extended her hand, demanding her phone back, promising that she would then forget about the bag incident. The guy couldn't help but grin, looking at her with slight disdain. Surprisingly, she still didn't seem to realize that the situation was already out of her control. Ariam's voice became as sharp as a knife blade. She made it clear that her patience was coming to an end. And if he continues, the bodyguards will deal with him without further ado. Besides, she reminded herself, awakened ones aren't allowed to attack regular people. Soo Hyuk calmly raised his palms. He hadn't broken any rules. The man admitted to using force, but only against an object, not touching any person, while his sister was actually hit. The anger on Ariam's face grew even brighter. She moved on to open threats. She pointed her finger in his direction, demanding that the phone be taken away from him, even if she had to beat him up. 2 men rushed toward him, but the guy instantly ducked and reminded, if attacked first, he has the right to self-defense. Without wasting time, he slammed a powerful kick into the knee of one of his opponents, and the man, unable to bear the pain, screamed so loudly that he could be heard in the neighborhood. The man didn't stop. He ran on, while noting that acupuncture techniques are great for temporary paralysis. He jabbed his fingers lightning fast at the vulnerable points of the second enemy, and he immediately started choking. His throat was bleeding. The remaining guard, a man named Kim Man-soo, did not intervene immediately. All he said was that he'd been wanting to try out his black marble for a long time. Soo Hyuk smiled when he saw that he had made an impression. Man-soo questioned with a slight anger. Doesn't he know who he is? After all, he is this girl's personal guard. The boy grinned again. So what, did it mean anything? Or just another stupid nickname? The man wondered, could it be that there really was someone in front of him who wasn't following the rumors? After all, he almost became vice president of the deportation device company himself. The aura he began to emit spoke of serious intentions. After all, only luck had saved the guy from the balloon, and he seemed to have gone a little too cocky. The guy had made it clear beforehand that if he didn't back down, he wasn't just going to get hurt, but something much more serious. The man threw the ball with force, putting all his anger and determination into the throw. But Soo Hyuk, acting as if he had anticipated the blow, deftly dodged the flying cannonball, staring intently at the iron projectile. The guy remembered Man-soo's nickname, Iron Sphere, which sounded like an ominous title. The man had once been at the head of the Chunai Guild and was considered a 10th rank awakened one. After losing the vice presidential election, he left office and stopped participating in the hunt, but retained his rank. If the man had continued his career, he could have reached heights where others can't even look. Rumors whispered as if his throwing power surpassed even Muga strikes, becoming a legend. Mansu admitted that the kid impressed him. After all, he had originally thought it was as if he had accidentally reflected the ball. Now the man realized his mistake. It was none other than Soo Hyuk standing in front of him. He put his fears away, saying that he did not crave enmity and would prefer not to interfere with this young man's path. The girl raised her eyebrows with an annoyed look and blurted out if he had lost his mind. Her tone sounded like an accusation of betrayal who gave a man the right to decide when things should end. But Mansu firmly refused to follow her orders. He had no desire or need to clash with whoever was standing in front of him. Even if their meeting was not the most cordial, but still the man admitted that he had long wanted to cross paths with this guy again, even if not under such conditions. The man expressed hope that the next time they meet, things will go smoothly. However, Soo Hyuk only grinned. After something like this, it was hardly possible to pretend that they were friends. In the same calm voice, Mansu replied that there was no need to jump to conclusions. Perhaps he had an offer that was hard to refuse. But the guy instantly refused and clarified. Hadn't he heard that he turned everyone down? Mansu grinned back and confirmed. He had heard it too often not to believe it. The man recalled that the guy seemed to have fought someone from the Emoji Guild, didn't he? Before he left, he added that don't underestimate him. He has his sources. At first it seemed that he was just a regular newcomer, but it turned out that he came upon a real big fish, albeit without a name. He called the young man a friend, promising that their paths would cross again. The girl was at a loss, not knowing what to do next. The only thing that came to her mind was running away. But Soo Hyuk stood in her way like a wall in an instant. The question hanging in the air was, where was she going? If the guy wanted to kill her, it would have been over a long time ago. The girl's eyes read horror, and she froze in place. And in the next instant the young man struck her throat with a precise motion. As a result, our Rim collapsed to her knees after realizing that she couldn't make sound. With a slight chuckle, the guy explained that he had blocked the voice points. And now all the girl has to do is silently beg for mercy. He could have easily crippled her, maimed her, or broken something without a second thought. But he didn't. He left the right to punishment to Sue A. Trembling on her knees, our Rim felt an unbearable tension, and the guy, emitting an incredible aura, firmly ordered her to stay and wait. It won't be long before she realizes that her whole life, all her beliefs and pride, are nothing but rot and ashes. The young man turned around and left the place, leaving the girl and the bodyguard in a mute daze. After a while, National Assembly member Han Gij asked one of the guards with annoyance, was he unable to get the video? The guard remained silent, and the deputy said with anger in his voice that the man should have drowned himself rather than come back with such a result. After all, the task was so simple. Where's Mansu now? The response was that he had resigned from his position. Chi-Su slammed his fist on the table with fury. How dare he act like he was above him? When he, Chi, takes over the presidency, the first thing he'll do is gather all the awakened ones. What did that guy even say? The guard replied that he heard the girl talking to him, but was too far away to make out the words. Chi, in annoyance, told him to call our Rim, to which the guard remarked, she refuses to talk to him. At that moment, Mansu himself came on the line. The deputy raised his eyebrows in surprise. Had he really given up? He recalled that he had given him a simple task, but as it turned out, that task was beyond his abilities. Should have found out who they were dealing with first. No amount of money is worth the trouble. The deputy questioned, could beating up some rookie really be that dangerous? Mansu replied that sometimes a newcomer was more dangerous than an old wolf, especially if it was someone like this young man. Gij expressed bewilderment, saying he didn't expect him to say such weak words. Let him say straightforwardly what happened. Mansu replied that he was only calling to warn him. If he didn't care, he wouldn't be alarmed. The guy turned out to be the nameless one. It should all make sense now. It's best not to try to get in his way. It's better to pretend this meeting never happened. With these words, Mansu ended the conversation, and Gij, seized by rage, threw the phone against the floor. A shout of anger broke the silence. How dare he? How dare this boy threaten a member of the National Assembly? The next day, Ocean Woo dialed Soo Hyuk's number and said he apologized for the long silence. He was just busy, wondering how he was doing. The guy said that there were difficulties, but he was coping. Ocean remarked that he'd heard about the fight with Moogie. He hadn't expected him to be so brave. He apologized for finding out too late and asked if the young man was hurt. Soo Hyuk parried. If he had gotten hurt, would he be able to talk to him on the phone right now? Ocean poured himself a cup of coffee and exhaled with relief. This was good. He was worried, for he had important business to attend to and didn't know if the boy could help. It was about the world of Tron-On. Soo Hyuk confirmed that he was familiar with it. Then he must be aware that the association is planning to close the portal at all costs. The major guilds have already started issuing permits to hunters to obtain magical weapons. Officially, everything starts in a month, but in reality, it's 2 weeks at most. Now more than ever, Korea needs a hero. A nameless hero sounds like a symbol. Doesn't a guy want to be that hero? Soo Hyuk, after thinking it over with equanimity, made it clear that he would give a try. The boy returned his thoughts to his past, realizing that he was not fit to be a hero. The man had no love for people and never sought to do justice. Despite this, those around him endowed him with a heroic title. The title seemed alien and out of place, like a dress uniform sewn not to his measure. Yet for the sake of peace in his homeland, for the protection of his loved ones, he was willing to play the role assigned to him. There were only 15 days until the opening of the Tran and Interworld portal, and there was almost no time to reinforce. The fundamentals of martial arts have always been built on 3 pillars: body, ability, and a clear mind. Since his body had already reached the highest mastery and his strength was under control, there was only one peak left. The next frontier was mastering the mind, mastering the energy that raged within, Qi, the most stubborn of all the elements. To reach the rank of Bodhisattva, he needed to accumulate a volume of Qi equal to 60 years of labor. The normal paths promised 5 years of grueling practice before he would be able to reach such a level. But time was no ally, and the only hope of a great Shaolin potion, powerful and rare. The man made his way to a building called Cosmos Sales, and was surprised to realize how long it had been since he'd been to these places. Here they traded not just earthly ingredients and artifacts, but trophies from other worlds. On his home planet, such potions had all but disappeared, but in this place, filled with goods from other dimensions, the chance was higher. Mana potions were especially valuable. They could instantly restore reserves of internal energy. One potion was valued so highly that it equaled 30 years of Qi accumulation, almost a miracle. As he glanced through the shop windows, his eyes stopped at the first floor. Luxury was centered there. It was here, many years ago, that he had purchased an all-terrain vehicle created by the hands of dwarves, a thing not for the poor. Going up to the 3rd floor, the guy immediately found himself the center of attention of a multitude of merchants. He looked around the crowd. The atmosphere was like a noisy oriental market where everyone wanted to sell something. But in the midst of all this commotion, there was only one thing to find: the coveted potion. By the wall, a figure caught his attention. A cat girl covered in an invisibility spell. The man's cheeks flushed as he was faced with a woman of the beastmen, a rarity in these parts. To others she remained invisible, but he could clearly feel her presence like a slight ripple in the air. As she got closer, the guy noted that she was using magic to hide herself from the eyes of others. With a slight chuckle, the girl noticed that he was quite observant, since he had managed to spot her in the crowd. Soo Hyuk made it clear without further ado that he had the relevant abilities. He saw her through magic. The brute gestured him into the shop. It contained exactly what he was looking for. The boy wondered. How had she guessed the purpose of his visit if he hadn't said a word yet? From behind the counter, the girl pulled out a vial of potion and offered it to the man, hinting that it was just what he needed. He nodded, still in disbelief at such quick luck, his expression betraying confusion. The cat girl asked with a sly smile what it was that surprised him so much. After all, she was the best shaman in her tribe. She proudly declared that her psychic abilities are among the strongest among her people. The man asked how much such a rare and powerful artifact cost. The brute, lifting the corners of her lips, replied that the price was 300 million won, a considerable sum. His insides clenched. Such a high cost seemed like outright robbery. The girl noticed his reaction, but only winked, saying that this potion was a top-notch potion brewed by her personally. She assured that its effectiveness was beyond question, for the process of creation was incredibly complex. And now she has only one vial left. The rest of it has gone to customers. The boy suddenly wondered, could she really be able to read minds? The beast woman shook her head negatively, but noted that she was good at sensing people's desires and aspirations. To her senses, it was not an ordinary customer standing in front of her, but a man of much higher status. Soo-hyuk thought cautiously. Could she even discern his previous lives? Of the creatures he knew, only the ancient monk from Black Mountain was capable of this. He exhaled heavily and, waving his hand, decided to believe. After all, there was nothing to lose. The girl chuckled discreetly, noticing how his voice trembled as if he was worried. The man was embarrassed, trying to explain that his excitement was not due to the purchase, but to another matter. He gathered his wits and wondered if he could touch her fur, for it seemed very soft. The beast man was taken aback by such a strange request and looked at him with an expression of slight squeamishness. With a stern look at him, she asked if he belonged to the exotic lovers. The man hastily began to justify himself. He didn't mean any harm at all. He just thought her fur looked surprisingly silky and pleasant to the touch. With a sigh of relief, she suggested at least exchanging names. It would be easier to communicate that way. After a brief introduction, she noted with a smile that she would remember his name, despite its strangeness. But in exchange for trust, he had to confirm. Did he have bad intentions? Soo-hyuk nodded with such conviction that there was no doubt that the truth was on his side. The girl, after hesitating, extended her hand to him, offering a simple gesture of friendship. The man shook her soft paw and wondered curiously if they could be considered friends now. She admitted that in general she does, but added that she chooses her friends carefully. The man noted with delight how soft her paw was, like a silk pillow. She squinted, as if checking to see if he was joking, and asked if he was too fond of anything fluffy. The man admitted with a slight smile, yes, he has a weakness for all things soft and cuddly. The brute shook her head doubtfully, unsure if she should trust such strange confessions. It's been a little while, and now the boy was already lying in his room, remembering everything with a kind smile. He was amazed. These creatures, the beast men, were indeed something special and almost fairy tale-like. He knew he wouldn't forget her face or the touch of her soft fur. In the future, when he bought an apartment, he would definitely get a cat. Sue, who happened to hear him muttering aloud about cats, couldn't believe her ears and asked where he was in general and what he was doing. The boy took out the potion he had bought earlier, thoughtfully noting that such artifacts were usually used by mages and shamans at particularly critical moments. The power of these potions lay in the instantaneous restoration of magical energy. It could be crucial in battle as well as in a healing ritual. Just one vial for that amount is an unthinkable price, but no other artifact enhances chi so swiftly and powerfully. The man emptied the potion in one gulp, hoping its properties would live up to expectations. When he channeled the energy through his body, it was clear he had not a fake, but a genuine elixir in his hands. No sign of cheap substitutes, just pure power that demands full absorption without residue. The system displayed a message that the 5th rank technique of the Heaven and Earth Unification Art had been upgraded to 4th rank. From that moment on, the path of development opened even wider. The purification of the body was completed, the energy within it doubled. When the body is fully cleansed, the Unity technique unlocks hidden potential, speeding up recovery many times over. The bone renewal process has been activated. The first stage of 2 has been started. The guy grinned, realizing that there were only 3 years of chi energy left to accumulate before the Bodhisattva rank. It was the system message that quickly caught the man's attention. The bone renewal was a true miracle. Inwardly, he realized that the cleansing of his body had completely opened before him paths that had previously seemed out of reach. Every martial artist secretly dreams of energy flows flowing without the slightest obstruction through the body. The myth of bone renewal has long been considered nothing more than a beautiful legend, inaccessible to the living. In the land of Huan, those who had achieved such things were called demigods. He had never been able to approach them in his past life. The man wondered what else it would take to fully complete such a rare process. And then a system window opened up in front of him, filled with new conditions. As he read the text, he realized all parameters strength, stamina, and agility must exceed 200. To reach such heights, it was necessary to reach at least a level of 180, not an easy task. Yet the man felt no disappointment, knowing that this path still had to be traveled. In exactly 15 days, Soo-hyuk raced down the street on his ATV, sensing that the moment of challenge had arrived. During that time, he managed to reinforce himself with 2 more years of chi, and the unity technique was calling to test its limits. The ATV pulled up to a fortified complex, a Tronon portal, where he was stopped by a soldier for inspection. The man calmly raised his hand, showing the hologram of his ID card confirming his identity. The gatekeeper confirmed authenticity and added that a license registration is required before entering. Soo-hyuk was about to move towards the registration area when he suddenly heard someone calling his name. A mature man stood in front of him and introduced himself as Kim Yoon-soo, the assistant vice president. The one explained that he had received an assignment to accompany Soo-hyuk personally. He would now be his guide. He looked at the giant portal structure, mentally noting that the stories weren't lying, it really was colossal. Yoon-soo explained that another assistant was already waiting inside. Equipment will be issued on site. The boy recalled the rumors. It seemed that this gear was being made in Elvenheim. Perhaps he might even see Shahar. The guy gave a light throttle and started to drive into the portal, which sucked him in very quickly and left the others just watching the void, and ended up in a dead desert, instantly sensing the difference in air composition and pressure. He remembered that his new assistant should be waiting for him on the 3rd floor of the saloon. Looking around, the boy wondered where all the hunters had gone. They just seemed to disappear. Upon reaching the establishment with the pioneer sign, he realized this was a right place. It was surprisingly crowded inside, and he realized why the streets outside were so empty. A bartender named Kim Ji-woon noticed the new visitor and immediately apologized that all the tables on the 1st floor were occupied. Everything is more expensive at the 2nd place, but even there is not a single free table left. Too many customers. Soo-hyuk calmly said that he wanted the 3rd floor. The bartender was surprised, as this floor was only available by reservation, and the prices were the highest there. However, that's where it is, private rooms that are magically soundproofed and cozy for special guests. The 3rd floor was mostly used by VIP clients, so you should check the list first. The guy said that they were waiting for him there. That was enough. The bartender only wondered why he hadn't told him right away. He escorted the visitor to the stairs, inquiring his name for collation. After checking the list, he reported that his companion had arrived and was ready to escort him to her. The guy motioned for him to follow, wondering if there was really a separate manager for one floor here. When they got upstairs, it was clear this floor was indeed radically different from the rest. The bartender opened door number 328 and pointed to the call button in case anything additional was needed. The boy saw a hooded figure. The girl sat on the bed as if she knew for sure he would show up. Soo-hyuk thought that this must be the assistant he was promised. Where her face opened, he mistook her for Shahar for a moment, but quickly realized his mistake. Taking off her hood, she expressed her respect, indicating that she was honored to meet Soo-hyuk in person. Serenial introduced herself as the 2nd apprentice of the Calileriot clan, also known as First Finger. Bowing gracefully, she expressed her joy at hearing of his exploits and merits. They say he has bravery, justice, and that he will one day be the greatest hero of his time. She is honored. She is too frank in her words, and if they made him uncomfortable, she apologizes. The guy replied that wasn't quite true and motioned for her to sit down. They settled at the table, and he inquired as to what kind of tea she offered him. Serenial explained that it was a tea made from the leaves of the golden moon, a rare plant that grows in the Elaine clan. Such a plant was extremely rare in his world, and she decided to bring it as a subtle gift. The boy drank a cup of tea, and after thinking about it, he realized that the gifts of the elves from the Elaine clan were tea worth more than the price of the purest gold. For a moment, he felt part of high society, almost like an aristocrat. He set the cup on the saucer and remarked that it was time to get down to business. He'd heard she had a magical artifact, able to identify the center of cosmic energy. Serenial pulled out a crystal, from which emanated a bright glow, and reported that it was the same artifact. Testing is not yet complete, but the device can already function within portals up to and including rank 7. This crystal is called in the shadow of the world tree, but because of the long name, it is often referred to simply as Shadow. The boy noted that, judging from her words, the artifact was not yet capable of scanning portals above rank 7. Serenial placed the crystal carefully on the table and replied that the team was still working on the settings. She was sure the problem would be resolved soon. The guy smilingly asked her to activate the crystal and added that the scanning radius was still quite large for now, which meant there was a lot of work ahead. She placed her hands on the crystal. I channeled my energy and began to cast a spell in the ancient elven language. The crystal activated and released its energy around it by dividing the room into 2 worlds and showing it to everyone in the room. The guy was amazed as he watched the process. And I wondered, is this really a map of the world of Tronon? He noticed one prominent mountain in the landscape, but not knowing the local geography, I couldn't figure out exactly where to look for it in reality. He noticed that Serenial's face had gone pale and her body was trembling slightly from fatigue. As he came closer, he saw the worry in her eyes. She replied that she was fine, just needed some rest. The important thing is that the center has been found. It's only 300 kilometers away by human standards. Doesn't he want to go there right now? She looked at the guy in surprise when he offered to wait until tomorrow. With a disgruntled look on her face, she wondered if she was the reason he had decided to postpone the hike. The lad again refused, adding that he was not going to go immediately, as he himself was also tired. He was about to leave, but she asked him to wait, saying it was his room and hers was next door. She left, promising they would see each other early in the morning. Then the door closed. The guy spent the night in meditation, but was interrupted when someone knocked on the door. He got dressed, opened it, greeted Serenial, and asked if she was feeling better. She agreed and thanked him for his concern. They went outside and approached his ATV. He thought he'd forgotten about it and realized that 2 people would be a little cramped on it. He asked if she would mind if she had to sit in the back. She didn't see what the problem was. After that, they sat down. The guy reminded her that she'd better hold on tight, or she might fall out. He felt a little embarrassed, but off they went. At this time, Chiun told the bald man that he saw them leave on the ATV. The one coldly replied that he would get his reward when they were done with them. Ji-woon became indignant and reminded him that he had been promised money in advance. The man calmly said it was nothing personal, but he didn't take his word for it. He may have seen them leave, but he can't prove it, just words. If he has to eliminate the elf girl, he'll get another billion on top of that. Chi-woon wanted to say something, but he didn't have time as the man hit the wall next to his head with force. He asked, hadn't he told him before that he rarely kept his promises? It was better not to risk his life because of stubbornness. He and his accomplices then left the premises. Ji-woon thought with a disgruntled look that he had given him the information and now he was going to ditch him. We'll have to see how the situation with these 2 turns out. Guy and Serenial were driving through the desert, and she said they only had 17 kilometers to go in a straight line, and then they had to turn right. After that, another 20 kilometers of travel, and they'll be in the right place. He saw the acid rats right in front of them, and loudly announced it. Serenial calmly used magic, summoning the earth's spirit. She used it to create a large wave of sand, and pointed it at the monsters. Then she summoned the spirit of water, Undine. and attacked another group of rats. The boy turned around and thought, is she really a spirit summoner? Does she have such a rare power? Suddenly, a giant rat crawled out of the ground, and it surprised him very much. Serenial spotted a huge monster and immediately summoned the spirits of the earth. It created a powerful wave of sand, but the attack had no effect on the monster, which struck her. The boy jumped forward resolutely and declared that he would take care of that rat himself. He used the wind fist technique, and a powerful stream of energy instantly destroyed the monster. After the threat was gone, he wondered what the difference was between him and his 800 million. Sereniel wondered if it was a wind spirit, but immediately realized a human couldn't use that kind of magic. The guy turned around and clarified that it's not really a wind spirit. He simply gathers the air around him into a fist and directs it into a single jet. It was like an explosion of chi energy. Serenial was stunned. He spoke so calmly and confidently about such a powerful technique. This ability requires tremendous skill, and he uses it without hesitation, growing stronger and stronger. Now she begins to understand why the ladies admire him so much. The guy noticed a huge fireball flying towards them and loudly warned her of the danger. The ball almost hit them and exploded very hard. He managed to grab her, jump to safety, and wonder if she was okay. Serenial thanked him and replied that she felt fine. She noticed cars approaching and asked if he knew who it was. The boy calmly replied that he himself would like to find out from her. He noticed a magical barrier on these cars, and I realized it was useless to attack now. He asked if she knew how to drive an ATV. Sereniel nodded and announced that she had an interworld driver's license and 3 years of experience behind the wheel. She got behind the wheel, and the guy wondered if she could get between those cars. Serenial readily agreed, and he said with a smile, "Then let's go." One of the men leaned out of the window, started concentrating energy, and declared that these idiots had decided to jump right into the tiger's jaws. It was their mistake. He released an ice crystal, but missed. The other man used earth magic, and Serenial, with a serious look, advised her to hold on tight. She began maneuvering from side to side, avoiding magical attacks. When they got close enough, the guy jumped onto the roof of the car. The men inside noticed his movement. He grabbed the roof of the car, and with as much force as he could, he started pulling her towards him. A bald man sitting in a nearby car laughed and wondered if the idiot knew what he was trying to break with his hands. It was hardened steel made by the dwarves. He was stunned to see the guy easily tear off most of the roof. Enraged, he loudly ordered the attack on him. The man climbed out of the car window and began using fire magic, saying he would smash it. The guy blocked the attack with the roof of the car and calmly asked, "Are you using that again?" He then pulled the driver of the car and quickly applied a few strokes to his acupuncture points. The bald man, seeing this, asked in surprise what kind of monster was standing in front of him. When his gaze turned forward, he saw a large stone wall that appeared right in front of them. Sereniel watched with a slight smile how their car hit a wall and started to roll over. The bald man thought in confusion, would he really lose so easily? He felt his strength increasing and decided he could not afford such a disgrace. Gathering all his strength, he jumped out of the car, and after landing on not quite human feet, covered his body with stone, promising to kill him. Suhek encounters a monster of unusual appearance. His opponent taunts him, calling himself a werewolf of rare power. The man calmly assesses the threat, preparing to attack. His gaze is confident, despite the obvious danger. The monster lets out a loud roar in an attempt to intimidate the enemy. Suhek remains unfazed as he analyzes the enemy's weak points. The guy sharply dodges the blow, showing a lightning-fast reaction. The monster's body is covered in strange stones that make it impenetrable. The girl drove up in a transport and said that it was time for Suhek to retreat from the battlefield. The guy decides to change tactics, as the monster is most likely above rank 10, and one-on-one he can't handle it. The monster suddenly disappears from the enemy's sight. Suhek looks around in confusion, trying to spot him. The monster appears behind the man's back, delivering a precise blow to his back. He punches, but the two men jump back sharply from the point of impact. The guy looks at the hit spot and is greatly surprised. He regrets his money. A rock block broke his ATV. The guy is furious. The monster has destroyed his months of effort. He tells the girl to stand and watch and turns to the bald man. The guy offers to help the bald man recover his losses with his blood. The guy challenges his opponent without wasting words on empty threats. His posture speaks for itself. He is ready to fight. He leaps forward right into the monster's forehead. He hits him with an aura kick, but there is no clump at the point of impact. Suhek stares at his opponent with obvious disbelief. His opponent demonstrates a strength that seems to defy all laws of logic. The boy clenches his fists, preparing to retaliate. There is no fear in his posture, only a cold determination to continue the fight. A bald man emerges from the sand, mockingly commenting on Su Hyok's actions. The man analyzes his new adversary, noting the strange abilities. Suhek watches as the enemy pierces the ground as if it were paper. The technique resembles drilling, but with the destructive power of the elements. Guy notices his opponent's dual ability of controlling ground and fire. This complicates the fight, but doesn't stop him. He hits the ground near the guy again, but he manages to dodge. The guy realizes his only chance to win is to break through his skin. He thinks there's a man under the rock and aims to punch him in the stomach. Guy's activating the gut destruction technique, creating auric spikes around himself. The man sneers, calling his opponent a fool. His words are a provocation to throw his opponent off balance. The guy below is already seeing a swing at his head. The block hits, and cracks creep across the ground. The girl calls out for Suhek in shock. She thinks he's finished. Boulder rocks and says it's the girl's turn. He claims he's tired of the protracted battle. He'd love to be alone with her. The girl interrupts the monologue, attacking with renewed vigor. Her goal is to save the guy. She uses the spirit technique, and with a look in his eyes, the monster says he's finished. But in the next second, a fist is closing in on her. The attack is very powerful, but somehow it doesn't hurt her. The guy protected her by stopping the huge monster with his hand. The enemy is shocked at the unexpected turn of events. Suhek calmly quotes the saying. Guy demonstrates how his attacks, like water, shattered the stone defenses of the enemy. Suhek admits his mistake by underestimating his opponent's strength. The man coldly inquires about his opponent's rank, emphasizing the difference in their levels. At that moment, the stone is swung. The opponent suddenly loses the ability to move. Su Hyok reminds him that he thought he was weak not long ago. The boy approaches the immobilized enemy, his steps measured and ruthless. The tension of impending retribution hangs in the air. Suhek explains that space is permeated with invisible lines of force. His hand points to one of them, as if drawing in the air. The man demonstrates how these lines can be used in combat. His fingers tremble slightly from the concentration of energy. The lines begin to warp, creating chaotic patterns. Suhek shows how their breaks become vulnerable points. The guy brings his hands together sharply, causing a wave of energy. The space around him vibrates, amplifying the effect of the attack. The rock with the ancient symbols is cracked by Su Hyok's power. Shards of rock fly in different directions. The man stands at the epicenter of the destruction, his gaze fixed on the distance. Even the chaos around him does not break his concentration. The hard stone is starting to crack. Suhek declares that the enemy's days are numbered. Suhek faces an opponent using a technique called ARGH. The monster falls to his knees without strength. The guy watches the unexpected development of events. His opponent is frozen in shock, unable to believe his own eyes. He can't believe his ability is gone. His opponent screams in rage, demanding his lost power back. But at the same time, he pleads with him. The man calmly watches his enemy's emotional outburst. His silence contrasts with the chaos around him. Su Hyok is examining the whole gang of pathetic criminals, all captured. Data about the international organization Iantis flashes on the screen. Suhek studies the tattoos. He realizes they're all members of this group. The scheme of machinations of the organization is revealed. Most members are not even officially registered. which complicates the investigation. Suhek notes Mantis's ties to criminal gangs. His hand clutches the pen. He's ready to act. Guy is discussing with an ally the impossibility of solving the problem without embedding an agent. His voice is firm but not nervous. Almost all the bandits are already loaded into the car. Suhek reflects on the difficult conditions of the operation. The adversaries operate covertly, leaving minimal traces. He can see how Serenil cares about it too. She looks at him and orders him to go. He wonders, are we going to Black Fong? The report of the assignment to find the Cosmostergy Center makes Su Hyok frown. He is a little hesitant about this decision. But the woman bloodily says criminals deserve harsh punishment. The gangsters themselves are in shock, of course. Su Hyok nods affirmatively, confirming his willingness to follow the plan. His gaze is forward, as if he's mentally scrolling through each step. The man makes a gesture with his hand, signaling to his allies, and begins to move forward. They have a long way to go through the desert. After a while, they dreamily arrive at the saloon. Someone in white shoes walks inside. That turns out to be Vladimir and his boys. He was told the nameless one was here. Where is he? People notice him and are shocked. What's a member of the Eight doing here? He tells them not to be afraid. Everything will be fine, never mind. He goes up the stairs, walking down the third-floor hallway. Someone approaches Vladimir with a request for support. His tone is polite, but there is an underlying insistence. The kid says he has information for Volodya. Vladimir ponders human frailties while playing with the ring on his finger. His smile hides his true intentions. The guy doesn't quite know what he's talking about. Vladimir listens to the information about the target's movements. His eyes narrow. He instantly analyzes the new data. The guy marks the pursuit route and talks about how the bandits are with them, too. He also talks about how the young elf girl will like the Russian. Vladimir comments sarcastically on the unexpected encounter. His posture expresses superiority, but there is a flicker of interest in his eyes. The man catches his interlocutor's gaze, assessing the potential of the alliance. The silence between them speaks more than words. At this point, the guy in white cuts off the informant's head. Suhek grins at his opponent, who is covered in the dust of his own blood. His posture shows his superiority, as if he had foreseen the outcome beforehand. The man coldly comments on the futility of his opponent's ambitions. He asks another guy on the staff to clean up this abomination. The action moves to the rock of the Black Fong. The boy studies the cave with markings of monster clusters. His gaze lingers on the area where the search has so far failed. Su Hyok wonders about the location of the Cosmo Energy Center. The disappointment in his voice is mixed with determination to continue the mission. An unexpected flood of water blocks the group's path. Suhek analyzes the source of the anomaly, trying to find a logical explanation. The man takes a step back, avoiding being hit by the jet. He sees a bat with red eyes in front of him. It scares him. The mouse takes off and activates his voice to shake the walls. The girl can't stand the sound. She's in pain. Guy activates a sound barrier, blocking the enemy's attack. Waves of energy disperse, creating a protective sphere around the allies. Suhek adjusts the strength of the barrier while watching the monster's reaction. His concentration doesn't weaken for a second. The monster's body emits cosmic energy, distorting the space around it. Suhek fixes the anomaly, preparing to counterattack. The girl notes the creature's connection to external sources of power. Suhek faces the main monster, whose armor resists even the blows of the wind. Guy changes tactics, looking for any vulnerable spots on his opponent's body. The wind energy concentrates around Su Hyok's hands, forming a vortex. His eyes sparkle with determination, his body tense for the final blow. The man releases a blob of energy, sending it into the monster's core. A blast of light obscured everything for a moment. She's dodging, and sends his energy in return. The guy barely manages to dodge that fireball. Suhek watches as the mouse activates a defense mechanism when threatened. Its shields absorb the attacks, forcing it to seek a new approach. The man approaches the mouse, studying its structure. Each movement is careful, as if he is solving a puzzle. Su Hyok prepares to attack the flying nasty thing. The man pauses for a second, assessing his punching technique. There's a slight weariness on his face, but there's determination in his eyes. He's throwing a hail of punches at her, and the mouse takes too much damage. She literally vaporized. The girl looks on in shock. The guy has exceeded all her expectations with his strength. The enemy with its wings padded soars through the air, flying over Soo-hek. Guy notes the enemy's lack of options. The wings were the backbone of his attack. And now he's gathering his energy in his fist and preparing to finish her off. He delivers a crushing blow to her. The charts of chi energy are displayed on the screen. Soo-hek analyzes the data, comparing it with previous readings. Soo-hek demonstrates the technique of multiple wind fists. After a series of strikes, his energy remains at a critically high level. Guy checks the speed of chi recovery, surprised at his own abilities. His body reacts faster than he expected. The man examines the scars from the battle, noting their rapid healing. His gaze is distant as he contemplates new goals. Soo-hek tests the limits of recovery, and the results are pleasing to him. The guy sits down in front of the mouse, and it turns out to be much bigger than normal. The guy is standing in front of a huge construct, radiating cosmic energy. His shadow dissolves in the glow of the artifact. Soo-hek reaches out to the center, feeling the vibration of the space. His face shows a mixture of curiosity and caution. He's thinking about how he should destroy her right now. The man discusses with his allies the need to gather everyone in the operation. Her finger points to the Mana Stone. Soo-hek proposes a meeting to coordinate the forces. Every word sounds like an order that cannot be resisted. Soo-hek holds the raw Mana Stone in his hands, studying its structure. His gaze expresses respect for the power of the artifact mined last week. He's already looking to sell it. The man hands the stone to an ally, emphasizing its value for future missions. Each movement is careful, as if he is afraid of damaging the relic. Guy spreads out 6 star stones on a table, noting their energy potential. His goal is to collect the 7th to activate the ancient mechanism. Soo-hek compares the stone's stats, looking for patterns. Each artifact emits a faint glow, confirming its uniqueness. He realizes selling all the stones will bring him 2 trillion won. The man realizes that this will cover all his expenses and a dead ATV. The girl refuses the extra share, showing her modesty. The elven woman explains her worldview to Soo-hek. Her speech is calm, but her eyes have a slight disregard for earthly values. The boy nods, acknowledging her point of view, but his gaze is fixed on the horizon. He's already making new plans. An ally offers to train Soo-hek in martial arts. His posture is confident, but there is a note of doubt in his voice. The man politely declines, recalling his specialty. His response sounds like a diplomatic refusal, not weakness. The girl repeats that miracles are not her element. The girl turns the conversation to tactics, avoiding further questions. She's also embarrassed. The man is discussing plans to visit her home country with the elf. His tone is friendly, but there is an undercurrent of interest in new knowledge. They decide to go back, and already the car is driving on the ground. More specifically, on the sand in the desert. The guy talks about almost arriving at dawn. The girl stares wistfully out the window. She says to stop her, she'll come out here. The guy turns around, sadly, realizing it's already time to say goodbye to her. He stops where she asked. The elf girl thanks an ally for his help. Soo-hek says that without her, things wouldn't have gone as smoothly as they would have liked. Soo-hek exchanges parting words with an ally, reminding him of his promise to visit Elvenheim. His posture expresses confidence, and his gaze is fixed on the horizon. The boy nods briefly, confirming the agreement. There's no doubt in his voice that he'll keep his word, even if the journey is difficult. The girl expresses the hope that the next meeting will be held in a calmer atmosphere. Soo-hek thanks her for their adventure together, waving her hand briefly. His words sound sincere, but not overly emotional. The elfess says her name is actually Riel. Let him address her as such. The guy admires her and agrees to her request. The girl turns to leave, signaling that the conversation is over. She waves to the boy. The guy puts on his mask. Pressure on the gas pedal. and he says he's going to give them an entourage now. The car roars and rushes straight into the portal, bouncing at speed and flying into the portal, flying out of there at high speed. Everyone around here is shocked. They surrounded the car. The guy in the mask pulled out his trophy and showed it to everyone. Everyone is shocked at how he got the Cosmo Energy Center out of such a dangerous place. He comes out and raises the artifact above his head, flaunting it in front of everyone. People are happy and shocked how Nameless did it faster than Vladimir. The man exchanges a glance with his ally, questioning the artifact's authenticity. The questions remain unanswered, but time is running out. The allies thank the Nameless hero, offering to submit to the authority of the center. Their voices sound convincing, but there is an undercurrent of anxiety. The boy nods, accepting the terms. His decision seems hasty, but there's a cold calculation behind it. After determining authenticity, the chief praises the hero. He takes him by the hand and celebrates his victory and the success of the mission. But people aren't happy, they're shocked. Someone shouts the nickname Nameless angrily. Now the whole crowd is chanting his name. The report of the target's sudden disappearance makes Vladimir frown. He rereads the lines, looking for a catch in every detail. The man notes a discrepancy in the report. His intuition whispers the enemy is closer than it appears. The enemy cleverly confuses the tracks, leading Vladimir along false routes. Every turn is a new trap, but the guy doesn't let his guard down. The man slows his step, analyzing patterns of deception. His patience is a weapon against the enemy's haste. He discovers the portal's connection to the Korean Association. His fingers slide across the map, connecting the dots into a single conspiracy network. The guy makes the decision to leave the area. If the target is gone, there's no point in staying. He's walking on the first floor. Suddenly, he hears something. A couple of scoofs speculate about how there's nothing special about the guy. The enemy leader contemptuously calls the men pathetic plebs. The man turns to leave, ignoring the taunts. His goal is not to win the argument, but to complete the mission. An ally warns Beck Muck of the danger. His words sound like a threat, but the boy only grins. He's used to taking risks. The man thanks for the advice, but continues on his way. Danger is his element. The action switches, and in a camouflage environment, the bodyguard meets someone. It turns out to be the vice president. The allies suggest that Soo Hyok start working together, pointing to the hidden entrance. His gesture is confident, as if he's been waiting for this moment for a long time. The man nods, following him. The man nods as he follows him. His gaze wary doesn't trust new suggestions blindly. A stranger in an expensive suit addresses Soo Hyok, mentioning his recent exploits. His smile is filled with hidden meaning, and his eyes assess every reaction. The guy remains neutral, neither confirming nor denying what he hears. His posture says, "I'm not looking for approval." The opponent asks, ironically, if Soo Hyok liked the attention to his person. His voice is provocative, but there is fear behind it. The man shrugs, showing indifference to other people's opinions. His silence is more eloquent than any words. The screen flashes data of an association linked to a secret organization. Suhek highlights a key name, noting its association with crime. The guy switches to the next document, his fingers quickly flipping through the pages. Time is working against him. The ally acknowledges the group's affiliation with an international organization. His gaze avoids meeting Soo Hyok's, as if he's hiding something. The man cuts off the conversation abruptly, sensing a catch. Trust is a luxury he can't afford. The official tries to convince Soo Hyok that the Magnus organization is not involved in the terrorist attacks. The official tries to convince Soo Hyok that the Magnus organization is not involved in the terrorist attacks. The guy interrupts the monologue, demanding facts. His patience is wearing thin. He is not interested in playing politics. The message about the information leak causes Soo Hyok to think. He rereads the text, noting the threats to the higher-ups. The man closes the file, realizing that he has become a pawn in someone else's game. His next move must be flawless. The ally apologizes for involving Soo Hyok in political intrigue. His voice trembles, but the guy doesn't believe that his remorse is sincere. The man almost silently walks away, but wants to ask one last question. Soo Hyok receives information about Magnus members losing their powers. He confirms it's his work. Guy nods briefly, not revealing his part in this. Some secrets are better kept in the shadows. The message about the possibilities of keeping secrets makes Soo Hyok chuckle. He folds the documents neatly, stashing them in the safe. The man switches the subject to his promotion and the fact that it's time to give him money already. He rejoices, remembering his cool ATV. Vice says the association will legalize transporting criminals and give the boy. The guy examines the Jeep handed over by the association. His fingers glide over the hood, assessing the quality of the illegally modified vehicle. Suhek nods, accepting the gift. His silence is more eloquent than words. He knows the commitment behind it. An ally demonstrates the machine. Suhek studies the techno shell, noting its value in the billions. The man asks a question about the transfer of the artifact, keeping his tone businesslike. His interest is hidden behind a mask of neutrality. Vice says it's still a small honor for a national hero. He says he'll call him back when the car is ready. Soo Hyok ironically accepts the title of national hero. His smile is fake and his eyes are as cold as ice. Now he's getting on the bus. He says he hasn't taken public transportation in a long time. The guy's buying food and comes home. Soo Hyok's mother asks about her son's sudden return. Her voice trembles. The man puts his arm around her. Sai offers everyone a taste of chicken. Soo Hyok ponders the nature of happiness as he gazes at the sunset. His shadow dissolves into the twilight, as if he were part of the landscape. The guy walks away, leaving the questions unanswered. Tomorrow will be a new day, and with it, new battles. The first thing we see is a shout of hooray for Korea. The guy raises his hands and laughs. The bank account shows an amount of 1.644 billion won. The association promises to compensate for the destroyed ATV, which gives the guy mixed feelings. Suhek decides to spend the money on his family, closing the transaction tab. His face remains neutral. Money has never been his main goal. The system notifies you when the level increase is complete. The hero reviews the upgraded characteristics, noting the increase in strength and stamina. The man closes the interface, ready for new challenges. Each accomplishment is a step toward greater goals. Soo Hyok gains the status of a gold member after another promotion. His armor now has a metallic sheen to emphasize his new rank. Guy checks out the changes to his gear, noting the improved features. Even the external attributes have become part of his legend. Newspaper headlines praise the feat of an unnamed hero who penetrated the Granin portal single-handedly. The text is accompanied by a blurry photo from the scene. A man puts the paper aside, avoiding public fame. His name remains in the shadows, as intended. The news reports are abuzz with mentions of a level 10 criminal being apprehended. Soo Hyok ironically reads about his heroism, not recognizing himself in the description. Guy notices the appearance of a representative of the World 8 in the portal. His interest in the case grows, but he maintains a mask of indifference. The action shifts to the business center. The ally displays an ancient ring that only 5 Koreans possessed. Soo Hyok examines the artifact, noting the fine engraving and the aura of power. The boy had heard legends about this object, but holding it in his hands was a different reality. His silence is more eloquent than his rapture. The ring created from mithril combines magic and technology. Soo Hyok is surprised that such an artifact was given to him despite being below rank 12. The man questions the reasons for the choice, but gets no answer. The trust in the giver remains in question. Soo Hyok is officially recognized as Korea's 7th Awakened One. The message is accompanied by a hint that this is only the beginning of his journey. The boy thanks with a nod, not expressing any emotion. His gaze is fixed on the future, where there are no limits. Soo Hyok studies the status bar on the status of Korea's top 10. His gaze lingers on the phrase about national patrimony, but his face remains impassive. The man celebrates the benefits of his new position, but does not allow himself to relax. Prestige is a tool, not a goal. The guy looks over the contract with the association, which spells out the terms of providing a personal secretary and a driver. Each clause is carefully analyzed. Soo-hek eschews unnecessary luxury, emphasizing minimalism. He'll give the car to his dad. Ally complains about high taxes, waiving a financial statement. Soo-hyok listens silently, noting the irony in his words. A man offers to work together, but his tone remains businesslike. Money is only a resource, not a reason for emotions. Soo-hek nods approvingly as he reads the terms of cooperation with the association. He is satisfied with the balance between freedom and obligation. The guy signs the document, finalizing the transaction. Every movement is confident and deliberate. Soo-hyok's sister is shocked at his new rank. Her eyes are wide, and her hands are clutching a newspaper with headlines about the hero's accomplishments. The man shrugged, avoiding unnecessary explanations. Fame has not changed his attitude toward his family. The sister insists on publicly recognizing Soo-hyok's accomplishments. Her enthusiasm contrasts with his restrained smile. Guy asks to break the news to his parents first. Even in moments of pride, he remains tactful. Soo-hyok warns his sister about the risks of being too frank. His fingers tapped nervously on the table, letting out a slight tension. The man suggests forgetting the conversation, but the sister is already determined. Words, as always, are ahead of thoughts. The boy ponders how to inform his parents of his status. His gaze is fixed on the window, where the sunset colors the sky purple. Sister chooses a moment when mom will be in a good mood. Even the heroes are afraid of parental gazes. The man sits in silence, waiting for the right time to speak. His posture is relaxed, but his thoughts are running wild. Soo-hek goes through the variations of phrases, rejecting each one as too pathos. Simplicity is his guiding principle. The screen displays training schedules and new techniques. Soo-hek concentrates on practicing his skills, ignoring outside noise. The guy repeats the movements with his eyes closed, bringing each one to automaticity. Mastery requires sacrifices, and he is ready to make them. Soo-hek studies the technique of energy absorption, noting its average efficiency. His hard training has allowed him to maximize his strength gains. A man ponders the existence of better methods. His ambition pushes him to explore new horizons. Guy is happy with the decision to develop one skill instead of superficial training. It accelerated his progress in critical situations. Soo-hek continues to focus on the essentials, ignoring the secondary. Discipline is his main ally in battle. The man has mastered the highest level of martial arts, but has no intention of stopping. His goal is to surpass his own limits. Soo-hek is planning new training sessions to keep the lead. Each victory is just a stepping stone to greater things. Guy compares the human body to brittle steel, emphasizing vulnerability in combat. However, proper pressure enhances strength. Soo-hek ponders the limits of the body's endurance. Even steel can be strengthened if you know its secrets. A man faces an unknown limit of human capabilities. His adversary is shocked by the hero's incredible resilience. Soo-hek continues to test herself, knowing no boundaries. Each challenge is an opportunity to become stronger. Suddenly, Vladimir appears in front of him, greeting the kid. The boy listens to taunts about his monstrous nature. His calmness contrasts with his opponent's panic. Vladimir ignores the provocations, keeping his cool. Words lose power before his determination. The man realizes that his true nature is difficult to unravel. This gives him a tactical advantage in fights. Soo-hek uses his mysteriousness as a shield. Opponents underestimate him until it's too late. The boy notices that the enemy has realized his maneuver. An attempt to use magic fails, causing confusion. Soo-hek instantly changes tactics to adapt to new conditions. Flexibility is his main weapon. He asks him to wait, but Soo-hyok quickly grabs him by the scruff of the neck. He's shocked that the little guy has paralyzed him. It only piques his interest. The man is annoyed that his opponent escaped the trap. His interest in the battle grows, fueling the excitement. Now he's ready to fight for real. Soo-hek activates the technique, a reddish glow enveloping his body. The energy concentrates in the palms of his hands, preparing to be released. The man maintains a steady stance despite the pressure of the force. His eyes narrowed. He's controlling every aspect of the spell. The guy slowly raises his arm, gathering energy for a counterattack. Every movement is calculated to the millimeter. The opponent is challenging, demanding to prove Su Hyok's strength. His posture is aggressive, fists clenched in anticipation of an attack. The opponent's energy strike approaches Su Hyok. The hero's spiritual level exceeds the norm, creating a protective barrier. A man analyzes an anomaly in the enemy's power. His karma, contrary to expectations, neutralizes the threat. Su Hyok deflects the psychic attack using the immunity skill. The waves of energy dissipate without causing any harm. The guy picks up on weak points in the opponent's technique. His next action will be decisive and precise. He spews out a blue aura that suppresses the demonic Vladimir. Su Hyok becomes completely resistant to his attacks. Vladimir doesn't understand. How is it? And then he gets punched in the face. The enemy was shocked that Su Hyok had survived the magic strike. His face was distorted with a mixture of fear and rage. The man coldly observes his opponent's reaction. Even death threats don't break his concentration. The guy swings and strikes again. But this time, the guy in white blocks the punch. The opponent screams, accusing Su Hyok of using a forbidden technique. The blood on his hands proves otherwise. He lights up his red aura again. The enemy vows to demonstrate his true power. His aura intensifies dramatically, distorting the space around him. He sends a bunch of spikes towards the protagonist. The kid is shocked by this, but activates the technique, and now all bullets go through him. Su Hyok counterattacks by lunging at the guy. Vladimir is in complete shock. After a while, Vladimir opens his eyes and sees the main character in front of him. The opponent scoffs, doubting Vladimir's abilities. His words are full of disdain, but the man remains unfazed. Su Hyok defiantly makes a provocation, focusing on energy control. Every movement emphasizes his superiority. Vladimir says he has never heard such words from a human being. The message about the vampire makes Vladimir chuckle. The boy ponders the unexpected strength of his opponent. His gaze slides over the map, noting the coordinates of the last fight. Su Hyok decides to investigate further. Every detail could be a clue. The enemy demands an answer about the nature of Su Hyok's powers. His voice trembles with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The man turns silently, demonstrating that the secrets will stay with him. Some secrets are not for other people's ears. Su Hyok examines the unarmed opponent, noting his naivety. Even in weakness, his opponent tries to save face. The guy backs down, giving the chance to surrender. His mercy is a rare but strategic gesture. Su Hyok accuses his opponent of stealing his life force. His words are full of hatred but lack evidence. The man shrugs his shoulders, dismissing the absurd claims. The truth is always revealed in battle. Though he is indeed a vampire, Su Hyok listens to accusations of being categorical in his actions. He calls him a vampire, trying to provoke fear. The man parries that his true nature has nothing to do with mysticism. The calm gaze betrays confidence in his rightness. A guy is faced with the question of his origins. The adversary assumes he is using the precious body to travel. Vladimir denies evil intentions, reminding of the purity of his actions. His words sound like a challenge to further dialogue. The man explains that blood theft is a myth that breeds only hatred. His speech is rational, devoid of emotional outbursts. He suggests that Su Hyok trust him, emphasizing the lack of risk. His body is a tool, not a source of evil. Guy analyzes the imbalance between his opponent's physical and magical power. Attempts to break the connection with the energy fail. Su Hyok notes that even in the mind, the enemy remains dangerous. His conclusions are accurate but require further action. The man satisfies his opponent's curiosity by offering a mutual exchange of information. His tone is friendly, but hides caution. Su Hyok reminds us that he has unraveled the enemy's essence at a glance. Trust is a two-way street. The action takes place on a city street. Soo-hek rejects the idea of a deal with the vampire who wanted him dead. His principles don't allow for compromise. The man offers a peaceful solution, but the enemy is already losing patience. Every word increases the tension. Guy realizes that the enemy is increasing the pressure through the connection to the clone's body. His own abilities are limited by this anomaly. Soo-hyuk recognizes the strength of the enemy, but he doesn't back down. Even when trapped, he looks for a way out. A man reflects on the need to become stronger to avoid challenges. His goal is to be out of reach of any threats. Soo-hyuk realizes that the current rank is just a stepping stone. The path to the top requires sacrifice and time. He is reminded of his goal. He is moving towards the pinnacle of martial arts. The guy realizes getting stronger is the only way out. The announcement of the joint action makes Soo-hyuk frown. Vladimir's speech is filled with contradictory appeals and hidden hints.